are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Koku, and today I'm being joined by my brother from the Pro-Black Perspective Podcast, Onitaset. Onitaset, say hello to the people.
Yeah, what's up?
Yes, indeed. Today we want to discuss a recent New York Times article that discusses race and economic opportunity in the United States. Now, the article basically outlines shit that most black folks who are in the know already knew. But it still is an interesting study to look into, and I think it speaks a lot to the dynamics between black men and black women in relationships. But before before we have that discussion, I want to read an article. I read this in The Guardian. It's from 2013. It's by a gentleman named Orville Lloyd Douglas, and it's called Why I Hate Being a Black Man. So it goes like this. Every time I sit on a crowded streetcar, bus, or subway train in Toronto, I know I will have an empty seat next to me. It's like a broken record. Sometimes I don't mind having the extra space, but other times I feel awkward, uncomfortable, and annoyed. I know I have good hygiene, I dress appropriately, and I mind my own business. However, recently, I finally became cognizant of why people might fear being around me or in close proximity to me. I am a black male. Although Canadian society represents the facade of multiculturalism, the truth is Canada has a serious problem with the issue of race. I didn't realize it until my sister said to me, Orville, people are afraid of you. You are a 6-foot-tall black man with broad shoulders. My sister is right. People don't sit next to me on the streetcar, the subway, or on the bus because they are afraid. The issue of black self-hatred is something I am supposed to pretend does not exist. However, the great French psychiatrist Frantz Fanon wrote about this issue in his groundbreaking book, Black Skin, White Mask, in a chapter called The Lived Experience of the Black Man. According to Fanon, the black man is viewed in the third person, and he isn't seen as a three-dimensional human being. The black man internalizes the perspectives of white society, and his negative thoughts about blackness affect his psyche. In the chapter, Fanon discusses a white child calling him the N-word, and how he became cognizant of how he is different and viewed as someone people should fear. There is also a fear by some black people that discussing the issue of self-hatred is a sign of weakness. There is a discourse that black people engender, that black is beautiful, but the truth is, the image of blackness is ugly. At least it's perceived that way. There is nothing special or wonderful about being a black male. It is a life of misery and shame. The issue of black self-hatred is usually depicted from a female point of view. There are documentaries such as Dark Girls, which aired on Oprah's own network earlier this year, in which black women discuss their feelings of self-hatred for having dark skin. There are numerous books, articles, documentaries, and essays published by black female writers describing black self-hatred. Black women are not afraid to speak out about their self-loathing, yet for some reason, black men are silent about our own contempt for what we are. A lot of black men don't want to acknowledge the feelings of disgust we have for ourselves. It is considered emasculating to even admit the existence of such thoughts. I think my own self-hatred manifests from the exterior, from the outside world. It is born out of the despair and the unhappiness I see within a lot of young black men. I can honestly say I hate being a black male. Although black people live to wax poetic about loving their label, I hate being black, I just don't fit into a neat category of the stereotypical views people have of black men. In popular culture, black men are recognized in 3 areas: sports, crime, and entertainment. I hate rap music, I hate most sports, and I like listening to rock music such as PJ Harvey, Morrissey, and Tracy Chapman. I have nothing in common with the archetypes about the black male. There is so much negativity and criminal suspicion associated with being a black male in Toronto. Yet I don't have a criminal record, and I certainly don't associate with criminals. In fact, I abhor violence, and I resent being compared to young black males, or young people of any race, who are lazy, not disciplined, or delinquent. Usually when black male youths are discussed in Toronto, it is about something going wrong. Honestly, who would want to be black? Who would want people to be terrified of you and not want to sit next to you on public transportation? Who would want to have this dark skin, broad nose, large, thick lips, and wake up in the morning being despised by the rest of the world? A lot of the time I feel like my skin color is like my personal prison, something that I have no control over, for I am judged just because of the way I look. Not discussing the issue doesn't mean it is going to go away. In fact, by ignoring the issue, it simply lurks underneath the surface. I believe a dialogue about self-hatred should be brought to the fore in the public sphere so that some sort of healing and the development of true non-label-based pride can occur. Of course, I do not want to have these feelings, to have these dark thoughts about being a black man. However, I cannot deny that this is the way I feel. I don't want to be ashamed of being a black man. I just want to be treated as an individual based on the content of my character and not just based on the color of my skin. Onitaset, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, man. Oh, man. Well, I mean, some parts of it are, that are legitimate, and that right there is partly, like, he represents why ideology is so important,
Talk about
and
it.
why a political education is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reality is, like, as you are a scientist, you know that there's evidence and there's theory,
Yes.
and oftentimes theory can inform evidence, if you will. I mean, evidence is there, but the way how you interpret evidence can be based off of, your theoretical framework.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So for instance, as a biologist, you would say, if you see if you see two animals that seem similar, you would try to look for evidence of, say, common lineage.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Whereas if you were not taking that perspective, you had an ideology of everything was put here, in 3000 BC or something, I don't know, right? Whatever year. You just think everything just came here just like that, no common heritage. You would look at this to see, you would probably open up, whatever holy book you prescribe to and look for evidence of this animal in that book.
Right.
So just the same evidence would be before you, two animals that look the same, but you would look for a solution differently. Right. And so here's this person who's clearly, raised to be an integrationist,
right?
A non-militant integrationist, and because of that, he's looking at the evidence of his existence, and he uses his education or his miseducation to say stupid things,
Yes.
But but that's what you would expect if we don't, politically educate ourselves, So on the one hand, like the first thing I was thinking of, if you don't mind, like when I was younger, these white folk would, like I would pass through white neighborhoods or Jew neighborhoods, really, right? And these Jewish boys would just, like, if they see me, they would, like, break out and run,
really?
Like, just straight up run to where they live,
Interesting.
Which was, like, pretty excessive,
Yeah.
And, of course, I'm a young black boy, and most black people would think I was, like, a harmless black boy, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But like, these dudes would think that, like, they would just run because of, I guess, the reputation of black people. And the only thing that would come to my mind, when this happened was, man, these kids don't even run that fast. Like, I can catch them, but if I did that, that's invited a problem. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Chasing after a black kid. But, as much as I didn't like that, I remember when I got a little older, there were like these three, and I was actually thinking about this earlier today, which is, that's how the ancestors work. But there were these three brothers walking, toward me, right? And I don't know what it was, but these brothers were walking, these tall brothers, a little older than me, and they were walking like, I feel like they were really trying to intimidate me, but maybe they weren't. It was just innocent walking. But I'm looking at them like, what's these three brothers walking up to me,
Yeah.
It wasn't, you didn't really feel safe,
right?
And then one of the brothers, closest to me, just reaches over and says, "Boo." And then we all laugh, but it kind of, but every time I think about it, I'm like, I wish somebody would do that to me again, because, that's not cool,
Yeah.
But it was kind of, in a sense, going along with what this brother was talking about, or the author was talking about black people, not being humanized, or black people being afraid of each other, or black people being socialized to be afraid of each other. Because even though I experienced, white kids running away from me, like literally running away from me, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be intimidated by, just innocent black boys walking toward me. But in retrospect, not in retrospect, but in excuse, I got to admit that, a group of young boys walking towards you, regardless of race, is actually pretty intimidating,
Right.
Because I remember one time I also saw these white boys walking toward me with baseball bats, and I just crossed the street. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not. It's not really. It's like it's nothing. Sometimes if you just one person and three people walking towards you, three or more people walking towards you, you're actually pretty vulnerable. You know what I mean?
Yes, you are.
If you're not scared, you shouldn't be afraid of a black person just on a merit of them being black. No, but the reality is that boys or men or whatever, if you're taken off guard, you'll be in trouble. Point blank. Period.
Yeah.
But that's one thing I wanted to say. But what was you? I don't know if you want me to. Yeah.
The sad thing is, I think this article that I just read connects with many black people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think many black people would agree with what he's saying here. And that's the sad thing, that we've been indoctrinated to believe this kind of shit,
Mm-hmm.
But it also was interesting because a lot of what this black man is saying is exactly why we have these problems with race and economic opportunity. So in the recent New York Times article, I think it was titled "Race and Economic Opportunity in the United States," it was a project, the Equality of Opportunity Project. They were looking at racial disparities in income and other outcomes that you see in the American society, particularly when you look at it from a black society versus white society, right?
Well, just before you, before you go to the article, I think there was another point that he made.
Okay.
That was pretty bad. Well, I mean, 2 points that I think need commentary too.
Okay. Go ahead.
One was this idea that you want to, like, for instance, he says that he resents violence. You know?
Yeah.
And the reality is that that's like one of the worst things. Like that's like probably the favorite thing of the favorite thing that black people say that white people love to hear
all the time.
You know,
yep.
The fact that you would resent violence kind of suggests that if violence were done upon you, it kind of suggests that you're not even organizing to react to something violently. And if you're not organizing to react to something violently, white people love that.
Excellent.
You know, like they love that, and so you know, like really, if white people were really terrified of you, that would be a good thing.
Yes.
You know, and that's why it's like your mentality, you know, how you're being socialized is really fundamental. Because, like you said, a lot of black people would agree with this dude. You know, they would agree with this idea. Like I wouldn't be surprised if a white person knows that. You know,
True.
Because it's just so good for white people to think that. You know, I mean, it's so good for white people to want, like, white people want black people to think that, resent violence, and don't aim to be terrified. You know, no, don't aim to terrify us.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Don't make us be scared. You know, try to be, you know, placable. You know, placated. Try to make us feel comfortable. You know, try to keep us happy. You know. And that right there, you know, the integrationist model. Oh, I want to sit next to you. Like, first off, when I go on the train and white people don't sit next to me, I love that.
I'm happy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love like that's like my day. You know, I go on the train and I can stretch out, and then white people stand in front of me, and I could easily offer them a seat next to me, but I don't. And it's what, or even if I do say, yo, let me move over, they're like, no thanks. You know. That's good for me. I got leg room. You know how bad it is when I'm sitting next to somebody and I don't have leg room? You know what I'm saying? You know, and I'm squeezed up. We're all squeezed up. We're all uncomfortable. Yeah. I don't like that. You know what I'm saying? So I don't see why somebody would complain about that. For me, that's like, you know, that would be like, that's why I love being black. You know what I'm saying? But the other one too, and this one I think is really important, because especially since we're going to talk about black women, you know, the physical features part, you know, that was probably the dumbest thing I've heard, you know, a black person utter. But it reminded me of a page from Carlos Cook's, the Carlos Cook's reader. So I put together the Carlos Cook's reader, and it has in it, one of the books is, you know, the Carlos Cook's book. And on page 71 of the reader, you know, you have this one part where he talks about the beauty of black women, you know, and particularly, and I want to, if you don't mind, I want to read this passage just to show you that, you know, depending on what ideology you have, you know, you view the world differently, notwithstanding the same evidence, you know. So the same thick lips and broad noses. You know, the integrationists would say, oh, that's terrible. But the nationalists would say, oh, that's beauty. Yep. So here's an example of that. He says, the beautiful full lips of the black woman, along with her affectionate disposition, have been known to drive men mad just to kiss and hold her. It is these beautiful lips, full lips of ours, that allow us to enjoy kisses. And our broad noses do not get in the way of our kissing. It is a natural thing with us. We were made for it. You take a white man and a white woman, whenever they learn how to kiss, it is considered a major accomplishment. That white man and woman are considered celebrity stars. They get big salaries. They are filmed or appear on television. The great event, a white man kissing a white woman. It does take some ingenuity on their part with their big, long noses and lipless cave mouths. One has to turn his head a little to the left, and the other turn her head a little to the right in order for those noses not to clash. Once in the right position, they each close to each other until the two cave mouths meet. They can't rush it. They must ease in because they can break their noses trying to kiss each other. With the black man and the black woman, smack, bam, instantly from any position, right away, anytime. You know, and then of course he talks. Oh, and then he says, as you look at the black woman coming towards you with all the lovely shapes and curves, it is like looking at the rhythmic waves of the ocean. And when she turns around, wow, that is where the joy begins. So of course, you know, you hear from this. Of course, he even says, let me just say this right here. Marcus Garvey says, the queen of all women is what Marcus Garvey calls black women in his poem, The Black Woman. Wait, what was it? Marcus Garvey also told the black woman that she had been dethroned through the weakness of her man. Okay, but that's the whole thing right there. You know, the idea is that first off, you know, he's exalting the you know, our features. You know, he's saying, hey, you know, being black, you know, being black and having a thick nose and thick lips and a broad nose is you know, makes for good kissing, you know, you know, and of course it makes perfect sense. But that's what he's saying as a nationalist, whereas this guy is an integrationist, and saying, who would want a broad nose and thick lips? Ew, it's so ugly. But it's like, who really would want to have difficulty kissing? You know what I'm saying? Like, what white folk have, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, they got to tilt their heads, they got to do what, you know what I'm saying? Whereas, you know, black folks just move, you know? Yeah. So it's like, but that's the thing that, you know, like I said, it's emphasized by the same evidence, you know? The same evidence, you know, thick lips. You know, black people have thicker lips, have broader noses. Same evidence, but one of them is taught to discuss it. Yeah. You know, to be disgusted, and the other one is taught to like it. You know, I mean, you know, it's taught to like it. So that right there kind of goes back into this whole, you know, why a political education is so important, and that's partly why, you know, like I write the books or publish the books that I'm trying to that I'm getting out there. Yeah. You know, just because without a political education, you know, like you said, the majority of our people are getting politically educated by white folk. And it's leading to this kind of mentality where it's like, you know, I resent violence, I want to integrate, and I think my women are ugly. You know what I mean? Yes. And that's a problem, you know? Huge problem. And I'm happy you actually pointed that out, because I was going to move into that article, but that's two very heavy points you pointed out there that we really need to flesh out more in our community. Our self-hatred is really just the talking points of white folks. It's just, you know, I hate how I look, I hate my dark skin, my big nose, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's exactly what they said. And like you said, this could have been written by a white dude. It could have been. You know, yeah. Because it sounds just like the average white boy talking points, you know? Exactly. It's what a white boy will want you to think regardless, you know? Right. And something you said, I have to piggyback on. This is a message to you black folks. Go and listen to Onitaset's The Pro-Black Perspective, the last podcast he did. I think that's number 13. 14. Number 14, where he talks about the problems in the black community is 99% due to you. Because a lot of you have this same mentality that I read from this, what's his name again? Mr. Orville Lloyd Douglas, Why I Hate Being Black. A lot of you have this mentality, and you are the biggest problem because you're just regurgitating what the so-called white supremacists, you know, dictate to you. And you said something, Oni, that's very important, and I tell people this all the time. This thing where you're afraid or you hate violence is the death of us black folks. Exactly. You know, it's the difference between slavery and not being a slave, literally. Exactly. You know, and yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, because that's the thing too. I need to do a podcast on this, but one of the things that I originally like going into ethics, you know, like ethics requires, like if you're trying to get rid of the wrong or trying to get rid of the injustices of the world, you have to act against the injustices. Yes. And you have to get those injustices out, if you will. You know, just to, you know, you be abstract. But the idea is that if you're being violently oppressed, you have to violently get rid of that quote unquote oppressor.
100%.
You know, or violently get rid of that oppression.
Yep.
You know, it's and there's no other way. For you to say for you to be violently subjugated and to say that you're against violence or that you resent violence is tomfoolery. You know?
Yeah.
Because you are essentially allowing the violence to continue. You know, the violence does not stop otherwise.
Yeah.
In fact, in the Pro-Black Compendium, I quote, Frederick Douglass, where he says, he's talking about, during, he was enslaved, I guess. So he says, the slave who was whipped oftener the slave who was whipped easiest was also whipped oftener.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so as to say that, just the idea that, and he continues to say that, just the idea that, that submitting to violence was a cure to violence didn't work in slavery. And it won't work, and it just doesn't work at all. So it's like, you cannot submit to violence in order to end violence. And that is like a rule of life,
Yeah.
like if you talk about like any situation you're in, if you're getting bullied or something and you just submit to it, you're going to continue to get bullied.
Exactly.
Or if you're, even if you're like, let's hope not, you're in a situation in your home where, your partner is doing whatever, submitting to that is not going to stop it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you have to. I mean, now of course, in those situations. Now there are situations where you could leave the situation, but there's also the reality that if you're able to stand up, particularly, like if you're, like this guy's a black man, if you're able to stand up to these other men, then yes, stand up,
Yeah.
But
by the way,
the idea is that you have to do something,
By the way, that was the thing when I learned about the civil rights movement when I was back home in the islands. When I learned about the civil rights movement, I learned Martin Luther King and them was talking about going out on a Monday morning, get your ass kicked, clean up, and go back Tuesday morning and get it kicked again.
Yeah.
And hope that your oppressor sees your suffering. That's not how the world works.
Not at all.
And I imagine there's a lot of people tuning out off of this podcast right now, and that's fine, because this podcast is probably not for you anyway. Because the notion, if someone's dominating you, they're going to continue dominating you. And they'll find new ways to dominate you too.
Exactly.
So I agree. This idea, and it was crazy. You said Frederick Douglass said that. Yeah.
This is what he says. Right? He says the doctrine that submission to violence is the best cure for violence did not hold good as between slaves and overseers. He was whipped oftener who was whipped easiest. And
about what year did he say that?
I mean, I'm guessing he said it, during his abolition days, but that's it. He's from 100 years ago,
Decades before MLK and them, Frederick Douglass told you that submitting to violence is stupid.
Exactly.
And yet, MLK and them did that in the 60s, and some of you Negroes out here are still looking to do the same thing today. I saw a tweet from you recently, because recently there's been these bombings in, I think it's Texas. And I saw a tweet and I had to shake my head in agreement. You said something along the lines of, there's a guy, most likely white, bombing black folks, and you black folks aren't organizing to do an investigation of your own to find the guy who's bombing you. So what black folks essentially was doing was allowing the violence to happen until Whitey goes and finds the person.
Exactly.
I mean, how dumb can you be? And now they said the guy blew himself up. We don't know if that's true.
No, the dude's on a yacht right now.
Yeah, somewhere chilling.
He's somewhere chilling right now. He's getting handshakes and trophies.
Yeah,
from
high fives.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How'd you do that? They're telling him about he's as dead as the Nazi scientists after World War II. You know what I'm saying? Right. They just go up and America just recruited them to figure out how they do what they did. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. He's somewhere in Venezuela right now.
Exactly. He's building more bombs. Don't you worry. You get a package in the mail soon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And meanwhile, black folks are just reacting to everything.
Always. Always. They don't demand to see the body. They don't demand to see the explosion. They don't demand to see the videos.
Nothing.
All the police. All the police cams. All the body cams. Should have showed you somebody's house exploded.
Yeah.
As police approach, but you don't see nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Nothing. They just tell you, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It must be true.
Yeah, exactly. But you get a package in the mail, and they won't report it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They'll stop reporting it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, So thank you for bringing up those 2 points about that article, and I think you can see where that article ties into the real article for which we're here to discuss, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the article that I'm talking about, it's called Race and Economic Opportunity in the United States. And essentially it's talking about the racial disparities that you see in income and outcomes between black folks and white folks. And they had 7 findings. I'm gonna read off the first finding, all right?
All right.
Finding number 1, Hispanic Americans are moving up in the income distribution across generations, while black Americans and American Indians are not. I thought it interesting that all of a sudden they threw American Indians into this thing.
Yeah, right?
But
I thought it was
Hispanic Americans. Yeah, it was kind of random, which made me start to think about some of the claims we always hear in the conscious community about the Native Americans having been black and stuff like that, right?
Okay.
But yeah, Hispanic Americans are moving up in the income distribution across generations. Why do you think that is?
Hispanics moving up?
Yeah.
Oh, why would Hispanic? Well, that's the thing too. That is white people moving Hispanics up. Well, my thing is that white people are practicing a nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
They are practicing a nationalism, and what that nationalism requires is, it requires like black subjugation more so than Hispanic. And I don't necessarily know the numbers of Hispanics, if you will, or Latinos or whatever you call them, but my understanding is that white, they're coming into the majority, right?
Yeah.
Or not the majority, but they're coming into being like essentially white numbers are dwindling.
Right.
Mm-hmm. What happened, like historically, if you will, is that white people prefer. How do you say this? Like, let's say historically, right? You have the reality that black people and white people put, like, in under normal circumstances, under fair circumstances, right? Black people and white people put together, kind of contrary to this article, but if they were put to compete against each other, right? The black person would outclass the white person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So because of that, right? White people are not going to have black people and white people, competing on an equal basis. Right. So, and that's kind of like what this article is really about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, or really the premise of this article. But the thing is that, I guess it's Booker T. Washington who said that you can't hold somebody in the dirt without, you can't hold somebody in the pit without standing there with them, you know? So the idea is that, you know, realistically speaking, if your numbers aren't that great, you know, in order for black people to still be, in order to still hold down black people, you have to raise up another people, you know? In the sense of, so this is what happened, like, historically in Southern America, right? Essentially, after the Haitian Revolution, you know, black governments, black self-determination was at an all-time high. And black people all over the Caribbean could have gained the leadership of, like, all of the Caribbean. You get what I'm saying? Because it was mostly black people.
Right.
Right? Well, it was because black people were a predominant population.
Yes.
So instead of white people allowing this to happen, you know, or instead of white people had to have a plan. You know, they were far outnumbered by black people and Latino people. You know, what they call white Creole leadership, right? Or white Creoles, you know? So instead of, you know, allowing for like a white Creole and black alliance, right? They said, let's put these white Creoles in the leadership positions. You know, so that they would be, so that there's no black leadership in these countries. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the Latino, you know, if the Latino is in fact increasing, it's partially so that there's no, like I say, there's no black Latino alliance, if you will. Not that you would want that regardless, but what I'm saying is that white people would say tactically that black people will still be the super minority, even in the case where white people no longer possess the majority that they had. Right. You know what I mean? So like, for instance, you know, you never hear about black Asian alliances.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? But the reason why you hear about black Hispanic alliances is because they both poor, they both in the same area, they both whatever. But white people didn't care for the longest because there wasn't that many of them. But now that there are a lot of them, it's like, let's give them that social mobility. And if we do that, you know, black people are going to be by themselves. And then, you know, and you're going to hear black people talking about, yeah, we by ourselves and we'll forget those Hispanics. And that's really the right thing regardless. But the idea is that, you know, strategically speaking, white people don't usurp power if they can still maintain, you know, the top position, and Latinos are not fighting against them.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So like white people are waging you know, it's kind of like inside of so the white Creole leadership kind of countries would be like, you know, most of South America, but like Brazil, Cuba, you know, Venezuela, all that. Like, they have their leadership, they can subjugate their black population, you know, if they want to, right? And they can still be beholden to white power, if you will. Or more explicitly, what I mean is Brazil, Venezuela, Cuba, these are not countries that are black power.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Like white people don't want black power to be, you know, a thing, you know, near their borders.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Right.
You know, they don't want black power a thing. So they're okay with Latino power because Latino power will still be beholden to white power, you know?
Right.
As opposed to, you know, black power. Because ultimately Latinos are just, you know, like they're pretty much just white people. You know what I'm saying? Or just mixed white people. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I was going to say. I think one of the reasons why so-called Hispanics get a pass, they're allowed to move up because white numbers are dwindling, and white folks know that they could procreate with these Hispanics who are vying to be white. They're white-minded. When it comes to black people, they're white-minded. And even phenotypically, a white boy could go with a Hispanic woman and have children that looks like him.
Yeah.
And I think they do that. I think white folks do that, let them move up. But they're not afraid because they know that these so-called Hispanics will carry out their agenda, raise their children to carry out the agenda, and it actually will help bring up white numbers over time. So I think that's why you see so-called Hispanic Americans moving up, because white folks are beckoning them to come up, to be white, to shit on black people, And we see
a lot of these, exactly. A lot of these Latino countries, they purposely underwent whiteization, as to say that they imported Europeans, under the pretext of, hey, get us lighter. You know what I mean? So it's like they're just extra people to increase because the thing is that white people, particularly the rich white people, when we look at the charts in the article, 90% of the top 1%, if you will, are white people.
Right.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that the white people on top want to stay on top, and they can stay on top as long as black power doesn't form.
Yes.
Because Latinos and Asians, they're not threatening white power.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Only black people threaten white power.
Mm-hmm. Say that one more time.
Only black people threaten white power. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
and that's like, at the end of the day, what it boils down to. This reality that, like I put in my literature, there's a black-white war, and to fight it strategically, you have to understand everything that's going on. But again, the fact that Latino is just to make sure that black power doesn't form.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Let's pause quickly for a station ID break.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
Peace Seeker. Malcolm X, John Henry Clark, Joseph Ben Yakinen, Edward Porkchop Davis, and others took notes from Carlos A. Cooks and might not have obtained their nationalistic fervor nor worldview had they not heard Cooks. This is Oni from the Pro-Black Perspective, author of the Pro-Black Compendium, and Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa. I scanned 2 out-of-print books valuing $800 new on Carlos A. Cooks, the foremost black nationalist after Garvey, and added Cooks magazines into one ebook that I can send you for your reciprocity. Send some love to cash.me/$ABSONI with the subject Carlos and your email address, and if your love is strong for your people, you'll get a book. If your love is too weak, you'll get a refund, and you should double your love next time. Carlos is the missing link, who was probably the greatest mind in the world from 1940 to 1966, standing over King and Malcolm like a giant over midgets. These are the missing pages of black history from the 1940s to the 1960s. I just need you to believe in your way of reciprocity, and as you give, you will receive. Cash.me/$ABSONI. Show me you value your story.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. My guest today is Onitaset from the Pro-Black Perspective Podcast on KWAZ Radio. We're discussing a few things, but mainly centered around a recent New York Times article talking about race and economic opportunity in the United States. We just recently spoke about how Latinos or Hispanics are allowed in this system to move up for various reasons, including the fact that they're not a threat to white power, They actually want to be included as whites. They act white towards black people, etc. And, that was one of the findings of this article, that Hispanics, what was it again? Hispanic Americans are moving up in the income distribution across generations. So with each generation, Hispanics become richer and richer, again, because they don't challenge the system. And they don't want to challenge the system. And in fact, they don't even want to see black people get the oppression up off of them, if we're being honest. When these Hispanic cops have shot unarmed black men, or Hispanic vigilantes like, what's this guy's name? George Zimmerman.
Yeah. I
didn't hear the Hispanic community denounce these people at all.
Exactly. Why would they?
Why would they? Because ultimately they were waiting for their pat on the head from white folks. And
for all we know, it was them trying to show their loyalty.
Excellent point. Excellent.
Because as far as I understand, they did vote in, America's current president. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As far as I understand, if I recall correctly, so they're probably saying during the Obama years, hey, look, we're gonna protect our son. We're gonna kill one of these Negroes, protect our son.
Yeah.
And we got you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We got you and your agenda. It sounds farcical, but the whole idea is, what is that about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there were 7 findings. I read off the first finding. You want to read off the second finding?
Oh, well, I thought that the first finding had another interesting point in it too.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, which you said, like you said, why you asked why are Hispanics moving up, but like another question is why are Black Americans not? And I thought that was like for that point, I was thinking, going back to this like I said, this Carlos A. Cook's reader that I have, he puts in an article written by somebody, discussing what was going on in Algeria at the time, and he was saying, and basically what they're describing in Algeria was basically, common imperialism, common capitalism, and basically how, the imperialist agenda is to go to another nation, destabilize its economy, make sure that they cannot produce anything, make sure that they're not competitive, right, economically, but also allow them to be an economic market, So as to say that what you see, so basically what you saw on a grander scale of this is France and Nigeria, France and Algeria, right, is what you see in white America, if you will, white America versus Black America, quote unquote, right? Which is this idea that you create Black people who are consumers but not producers, and you have this relationship where you want them to be poor in order that they can continually be consumers and not producers. That they cannot compete against you economically, and it's basic, it's basic economics in that sense of you want a population dependent on you, right? Or you want a population to be broken down and poor in order for it to be a viable market for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the sense of, hey, look, because you're giving them the job, you're giving them the currency, you're giving them, but you're also giving them everything that they can spend their money on. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a controlled market. So it's like, why are Black people not increasing? It's because their design, if you will, is to keep Black people poor, in order that they can exploit them, because you can't, like that's partly why, the Berlin Conference, if you will, even happened, because, Britain let's say when Britain was a big producer and France was a big producer and America was a big producer, they can't necessarily keep selling. They they can't necessarily send, like America can't necessarily send socks and rice or whatever to England per se. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Only because England is like, hey, I can make those same socks, or I can make those. You know what I mean? They have the same factories already, but you can send it to people who don't have factories.
Right.
And you got to make sure that they don't have factories in order that you can keep sending them what you make in your factory. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to keep those, like you have to keep what they call the third world poor, but at the same time, you know, this is all local too. You know, this is what America does locally. It says we're going to keep these black people poor in order that they are always going to be a market, because they're not going to ever produce. We're going to make sure they don't produce their own toilet paper.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to make sure they don't produce their toothbrushes. They don't produce their own television shows. We got to make sure of this so that we will always have a market for our television shows, for our toilet paper, for our, you know what I'm saying? So that is, you know, that was the other aspect of it. You know, not just, you know, what you wanted with the Latinos, because again, like the Latinos then can, you know, it's okay for the white man to get the Latinos having, you know, better income, because, you know, when they become the majority, you know, the super rich white folk, if you will, can always just pick their choice and, you know, have their offspring or whatever. But as long as they keep black people down, they always have a market on hand, you know, and we like to brag about that, you know, that huge, you know, consumer spending. And the reason why we brag about it, I mean, it don't make any sense to brag about it, but it never translates into a gross domestic project, if you will, you know, or, you know, GDP or whatever,
mm-hmm.
because we're not producing anything, you know? But yeah, that's the point I wanted to make about that. But you wanted me to read the second one, or?
Well, before you go there, one of the notes I had jotted down after reading that first finding was the idea of the poverty trap. You just kind of touched on it. The poverty trap is to always have you as a consumer, right?
Yeah.
So you never have the capital. So for those who don't know, the poverty trap is just a mechanism which makes it difficult for people to escape poverty. So to escape poverty, you have to have a lot of capital, a lot of wealth, you know, property, money, that kind of thing, or instruments that create wealth. And if you're a consumer, exclusively a consumer, you'll never have the capital it requires to escape poverty, right? So another thing that they kind of talked about in the article too, to escape the poverty trap, you have to have help. Now, help is a very tricky thing for that, in my opinion, for the black community, because help tends to be these welfare type programs, right? And I find these welfare programs to be more hurtful than helpful. A lot of people don't recognize that with welfare, first of all, welfare is really meant to be temporary, right? But it has low benefits, you know, it reduces your purchasing power, et cetera, et cetera. It leads to you being kind of cheats and liars in order to survive. But ultimately, it's about that dependence, right? You have to rely on someone else to have your needs met. And it doesn't incentivize you to do much. So when you only mention why are blacks, why is it that they stay in the same place? A part of it, to me, it has to do with this concept of, you know, these welfare type programs, this dependency, this being consumers and not producers type thing, you know, like what you were just talking about. You know, so if you remain dependent and on aid indefinitely, you're going to stay the same place, and you might even regress, right? You might even get worse off in time. So I thought that was also a point to make for that first finding, that as black folks, you will stay at the bottom if you don't reverse the role that they have you in. If they you know,
and that's practicing nationalism. You know, that's the difference. It's like if you're trying to integrate with them,
yes,
you know, you don't integrate. Like integration is one of the traps for saying, hey, just consume like we do.
Right.
and ignore that we're producing for ourselves. But nationalism is saying, hey, look, we need to produce for ourselves just as they produce for themselves. So it's a whole different mentality. But as long as we're taught to just want to integrate, integrationism and all that, or even like I hope we talk about later, socialism,
Mm-hmm.
But these kind of which a brother was saying was just militant integrationism. But the idea is that if we're just going to talk about integration, if we're just going to integrate, then what that amounts to is just we're just going to be consumers and we're going to be locked into poverty. Yeah. And whereas some people will get out of poverty, the majority, like some people will, if they entertain, bug dance or whatever, mm-hmm. The majority will, like you say, some will regress. Yeah. Because and the gap will widen. I think some people will speculate that eventually black wealth will become zero. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't remember the year. We were like 2020 something or 2050 or something like that. But black wealth will just be zero. Yep. And that right there is but that's exactly what you would expect from some people who don't produce anything. Because for all the because I'm not talking bad about I'm not if I say something bad about capitalism, I'm not saying anything good about quote unquote socialism, Marxism, but the thing with what they say about socialism, Marxism would be this idea that the bourgeoisie or whatever, the people who own mm-hmm. physical capital, people who own capital or physical capital like factories, so on and so forth, are the people with wealth, the people with power, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. But or they can have some power, something like that, right? But the whole idea is that if that's the case, then you as black people who don't have factories, if you will, or don't have the means to employ your own people, or are not even trying to build those things, you will have zero wealth in that community. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I think I'm reminded of another Frederick Douglass quote. But in order to look for it, I'll probably have to bring it up later. But I reminded of another Frederick Douglass quote where he actually talks about the same thing. And I think
I was in an event a few weeks ago, and once again it was black folks talking about something that I used to believe when I was a religious youth, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They were talking about being anti-capitalist, and I mentioned to a sister who was at the event sometime afterwards, I mentioned to her that the thing about black folks is we turn away from capitalism because we've been taught that money is the root of all evil and stuff like that, right? But I told her, I used the analogy, I said, if we're playing a basketball game, the white boys versus the black guys, right? And the white boys are whooping our ass in basketball. It makes no sense for us to then start playing soccer on the basketball court. A lot of black folks, they talk about socialism and communism as the way for us and this, that, and the other. But to me, that's just turning tail from getting your ass whooped and trying to find some alternative. Well,
yeah, and not just that, but it's also like since we're going to talk about it, it's also a misunderstanding of like essentially my view is this, that Marx, if you will, quote unquote Karl Marx or whatever, I think what happens is that you miss the racial component when the racial component is very important, and we're going to see that in this article, right? But the racial component is very important, and if you just look at it from a class argument, you can't take the race out of it, right? So what happens is that Karl Marx is a white boy looking at white society, and he doesn't factor in that white people are just vicious savages. Right. So when he talks about the capitalists and these powerful white, private white citizens, right? He's saying, hey, these private white citizens are really vicious people, right? And then what he does is he does some mental magic on on the person reading, in the sense of he says, okay, because they are wealthy people and they are savage people, therefore the wealth is what makes them so savage. And it's like, no, it's not. It's just that you all are white and you're all savages. You know what I'm saying? Because even the police officers are savage. You know what I'm saying? Like any black person could open their eyes and see the police officer is a savage. The doctor is a savage. The teacher is a savage. Everybody, every white person you meet is going to be a savage. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But because he is white and he's in a white society, and of course he's engaging in philosophy where, you know, the quote unquote, you know, European philosopher is supposed to be he's supposed to be the non-savage. He's supposed to be the civilized guy because he's looking at what African people taught white people. You know what I'm saying? He's looking at what Plato. He's looking at Plato, the student of Africa. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So because he's looking at Plato, Plato's like, hey, you got to be moral, you got to be dignified. He's looking for what's the problems of society. And so he goes, and so that's where you get that Marxism, if you will, right? And that Marxism is saying, hey, you know, these people are savages, but you're missing the point. The reality is that, you know, and actually it's going to tie back into the Frederick Douglass quote right here, right? But the reality is that you as men and women have to start doing stuff for your people. And this whole mythical, you know, socialism or this mythical we're going to be a revolutionary, it's stupid. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying? Like, you got to start doing, and you don't have to call it capitalism, you don't have to call it socialism, you don't have to call it Marxism, but it's about being, and actually let me make Frederick Douglass say it. You know, he says, it is vain that we talk of being men if we do not do the work of men. Mm-hmm. We must become valuable to society in other departments of industry than those servile ones from which we are rapidly being excluded. Mm. We must show that we can do as well as they. When we can build as well as live in houses, when we can make as well as wear shoes, when we can produce as well as consume wheat, corn, and rye, then we shall become valuable to society. Society is a hard-hearted affair. With it, the helpless may expect no higher dignity than that of paupers. The individual must lay society under obligation to him, or society will honor him as a stranger and a sojourner. Mm-hmm. You know, but the whole thing, you know, eloquently, obviously. But the whole thing about Frederick Douglass, he's saying if you can't just live in houses, you got to build them too. Yes. You know, yes. And white people cannot. If white people tell you, hey, you know, that's capitalist thinking, you know, or if somebody's telling you, hey, that's capitalist thinking, no, you need to live in something you built. Mm-hmm. Point blank. You know what I mean? You need to live in something that you built, and you can't continue to you can't continue to say otherwise. You know, if somebody is giving you an ideology that's telling you, you know, oh no, that's capitalism or something, you know, to build the house that you live in or to eat the food that you're planning, you know, they're trying to confuse you away from being the man you're supposed to be. And I should tell everybody that I included this quote in the Pro-Black Compendium, you know? I included that, you know, under the conflict resolution, but I included that because I'm telling you, we have to understand that much. The idea that, and you have to have this on hand, you know? You have to have this in memory. Yeah. The idea that what it means to be men. And when people talk about this economic debate, and if people tell you, hey, you know, we got to be about this, it's like, it's not about capitalism. It's not about communism. Because the trouble with capitalism, the trouble of this bourgeoisie who puts profit over people is not inherent in the system of capital. Not it's inherent in industrialization or anything. It's inherent in white people. Right. You get what I'm saying? Right. It's inherent in white people, but white people build, you know, tall buildings or building whatever they're doing. You know, if you're doing the same thing, it's not because you're not necessarily going to be carried away like they will. Right. You know what I'm saying? They are carried away with whatever they do. You know, with whatever they do, and that's another reason why I don't think that we should even be engaging in that socialism stuff. You know, because white socialists are horrible people too.
I agree.
You know, horrible people. You know, like the white socialists, what they were trying to do with Garvey, if anybody wants to read about that, you read Race First, and you'll see the white socialists were going after Garvey like it was nobody's business. Mm-hmm. And then when regarding George Padmore, they kicked him out because he was trying to put his people forward. Because he wanted black people to be put forward, they kicked him out. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, we can't, we have to think for ourselves and understand that, what it amounts to be a man. It's not just enough to live in the house. And notice that Frederick Douglass, again, he's from 100, close to, 150 years ago. And he's saying you can't just consume, you have to produce. Mm-hmm. He's saying that 150 years ago, and what are we still doing? Why do I have to say it if he said it?
Exactly. So, before we move on, why do you think it is we still have to say it? What's going on with black people?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like because, again, that's why I put this together in this book. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. This book is not just for, like the quote unquote integration. It's even for the nationalists because it's for all of us because a lot of us are not on cue with what our ancestors have said. And the thing is that white people have an agenda, I don't remember if it was, I think it was last podcast. Yeah, it was last podcast where I told you what the white people said about Marcus Garvey in my own childhood textbooks. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. They have their own message. Because like I said, it was like a 600-page history book on American history, and the only mention of Garvey, or the only mention of black nationalism, if you will, or authentic black nationalism, is Garvey. You know what I'm saying? It's a paragraph in a 600-page book. Right, and of course, that's just one book from 1 year. Of course, I went to school for maybe, 12 years, 13, 15 years, with the, primary school and all that. Yeah. 15 years. And let's say I only get like a page mm-hmm. of knowledge about Marcus Garvey. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If they were even assigned, Mm-hmm. So after all those years of studying, I only get like an hour, an hour. After, so much socialization. So, and what that does for me, if you will, what that does to all the black people going through the public school system is it gives the white man's message, the white woman, white man's message.
A platform, yeah.
To black people. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And that message would make it so that you don't know how your ancestors already rebutted them. Or how your ancestors already, figured it out mm-hmm. and decided to do something differently. What you're doing is you're just saying, hey, now with all this confusion, what can I do with this confusion? And so a lot of people would take the confusion and they could do something with it, but they're really just reinventing the wheel, Mm-hmm. So you'll have black people talking right now, hey, we got to produce and not consume. But again, Frederick Douglass said this 150 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't the only one. Right. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He wasn't even the only one. So it's like in that regard, white people will make you, kind of like let's say, a video game when you hit the reset button, they make you hit the reset button instead of, the save, continue your progress button. You know what I'm saying? Or maybe that might be a little too, might be a little too far, too nerdy, if you will. But no one's gonna believe me now when I say I don't like nerds, right? I say I don't like nerds, and then you're like, wait, what? I don't know. That sounds a little nerdy right now. But I'm just saying it makes you so that you start from level 1 instead of level 20 or something. You know what I'm saying? All right, I'll stop with that. But you get what I'm saying, right? Yes, I get. Yeah. I get okay, all right. You want to be like dork.
I said it, but you just didn't hear me say it. So let's go on to finding number 2. Can you read that for the audience?
Yeah. All right. Let's see. All right. So finding number 2. it says, the black-white income gap is entirely driven by differences in men's, not women's, outcomes.
I found this one to be interesting.
Yeah.
They mentioned later on that black women have higher college attendance rates than white men, conditional on parental income. And that's something we've been hearing for a while in the community, how black women are the most educated group in America.
Wow.
But is it about education really? Why do you think black women don't show the same difference as black men?
Well, that's the thing too. So when I looked at it, what was interesting is that they're not saying that black women don't show the same difference as black men, but they're saying that black women are on par with white women.
With white women, yes.
Exactly. But at the same time, like, they didn't show you how black men were on par with black women, or black men were on par. Like, how you compare black men and black women, or how do you compare black men and white women? You know, like, they were just going man to man. So of course I'm looking at the chart that they show.
Yes.
You know, and you can kind of glean that it looks as if black women were actually doing better than black men.
Yeah,
No, not just white men, but than black men too.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So to say that the racial gap, right? Like I said, the racial gap was between, because there's also a gender gap. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So
there's a gender gap and there's a racial gap, you know? So white women do worse than white men, right?
Mm-hmm.
And black men do worse than black women. But if you look at these two charts and you really wanted to superimpose them, but if you're looking at it just, you know, casually, you'll see like where the 30th percentile is for black women and where the 30th percentile is for black men, or where the 10th percentile, all that. When you compare it, it looks like black women are actually doing better than black men.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So as to say that the gender gap was smaller than the racial gap. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm
looking. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and
you're looking at it now, right?
Yeah, and I'm curious as to, and this might be a little controversial for some, but why do you think the black women are, should I use the word allowed? Why are they doing better than black men?
Yeah, and you know, kind of like touching back to your article, you know, just this idea of how black men are, like, because black men, you know, I think it's Francis Cress Weldon who points out that black men are made to be like the enemies of white men. You know, not the enemies, but like the guys, the people who will fight. Not to say, no, sisters will fight too. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying that first and foremost, you want men to be the front line.
Yes.
Against you know, in any conflict, you want men to be the front line.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because really, you know, you want to because in order to value something, you have to defend it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you defend something by putting it behind you, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know, so it's like, you know, the classic example is the lion and the hyena. You know, even if the woman goes out, even if the female, you know, the female is hunting, you know, the reason why the female hunts is so that the male can, you know, keep his strength for when a threat comes.
Defense.
You know, like when a hyena comes, then, you know, at least in the lion community, the lion will go after the, you know, the hyena. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So he's not going to be hunting all day, you know, get tired, and then the hyena comes along, and then what? You know what I'm saying?
And just wipes him out, right?
Exactly. Well, you know, so it's like, but, you know, with this socialization going on, with, you know, quote unquote feminism, you know, getting in the heads of, you know, a lot of black women can be, you know, it's kind of like, it's like as long as, like I said, it's a war. It's the white man versus the black man.
Yep.
And the white man has to. He needs assurance. Like, in order for, like, all he needs to make sure of is that the black man doesn't have his fair chance.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But and as long as he makes sure of that, he will he'll promote anything. He'll do anything. He will he will allow anything. But of course I should say this too, that even though the black woman is seen as doing, she's doing any better than the black man, it's, well, at least from these charts, like I said, it's not too distinguishable. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In that sense, like it's not like a huge difference. Like, it's not a huge gap between the two. Right. Now, it might become a huge gap, but what you see from this chart, at least, is that black men and black women are pretty much on par, and the black woman just edges him out.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So it would be a little unfair to be like, oh well, she's because like other groups are really like ahead. You know what I'm saying? Like the Asian is ahead. Right. The Latino is getting ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it looks like this white man is just keeping the black woman and the black man down. But he's particularly but him keeping the black man down is like really the instrument. So the black woman that he would raise, if he were to raise anyone, would be the black woman who was co-opted, integrated, so on and so forth. Just like he would only raise the black man who was co-opted and integrated. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it all comes back to like strategy, if you will.
Right.
Like, it comes back to strategy, but at the same time, it's like, it would behoove us to say that, like the black woman's not really too much ahead, but she could become ahead. But and the reason why she would go ahead is only because, like the white man, the way how he sees it is the struggle is between men.
Right.
And if he would do any dirty trick to make sure that the men are kept down.
And that's that's the point I was trying to get to. I was trying to unpackage it to that point, and I want I want our female listeners to hear that and to understand that point. That you have to understand that it's a war. You have to understand that really, in the white man's eye, the war is with the black man. So he's going to play dirty pool. He's going to, not by much, but he's going to promote black women over black men to destabilize the relationship between black men and black women.
Exactly.
Essentially destabilize the black community, right?
Exactly.
Because now your women feel like you're a loser, right? Because that's the first thing you hear from like swirlers and stuff like that. They think
exactly.
They think, oh well, since y'all talking about the the white man does this and that, maybe I should go over there and check him out instead. I've actually heard those words said, right? So we gotta. That's what I want to unpack there. We have to understand, ladies. It's a war, number one, and number two, it's not fought fair.
Exactly.
And if you're not careful, you're going to be used.
Exactly.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. Because like you're saying, the one thing you would get clearly from this is because that's another thing too. Because now the black woman is placed. Because this is the thing too. Black women outshone, like edged out white women too.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And that is like fundamental. Because what that does is that puts black women as the best woman.
Yes.
Or at least in the black-white paradigm.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that puts her as a top woman, right? And then in the when you look at the men, the white man puts himself leagues above.
Yes.
The black man.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said with the swirling thing, it it stands to reason, at least in a black woman's mentality, that that's the man. You get what I'm saying? Or even if you look at it in the sense of, hey, the black woman edges out the black man. You know, like you said, in a domestic situation, you know, how does that operate? You know,
mm-hmm.
How does she feel? You know, like it's different when, like, let's say, you know, you're on a date. It's different if, you know, you're on a date and, you know, you expect is the man to, you know, pay the thing. But if you're making more than him, you know, is the expectation still there? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then she goes into, and it's not just that, but it could also be, you know, whatever. You want to go on a cruise, you want to whatever your income level is. The idea is that if the two of you are more on par, right, you're not getting the quote unquote princess treatment that you are socialized to want. You know, there's this book that I recommend in the compendium called Pieces of a Puzzle. You know, the one thing that black women will not talk about. You know, and it talks about interracial relationships and how, and you know, the sister wrote this maybe 20 years ago, and she's talking about how a lot of sisters, you know, especially during that time, like interracial relationships, a lot of sisters have interracial relationships with white men and don't talk about it.
Right.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, now it's pretty much out in the open. But, you know, these are, but black women still don't talk about what goes on, you know? And there are a lot of interesting things. And actually, when you read the Carlos Cook's book, he talks about how let's say, let's be family friendly. Let me not talk about it. but you know, basically, white men are cunning linguists, you know. But anyway,
that's their language,
huh?
That's their language, huh?
Yeah, exactly. That's their language. You know, like that's what they do. As you know, brothers like to,
right.
You know, get down and dirty, right? You know what I'm saying? Right. But anyway, but the whole idea is that you know, that's why white people love that stuff. Partly because it confuses them. It confuses the women, right?
Yeah.
But the thing too is that, you know, they have these secret relationships, and part of that, those secret relationships, you know, is like the whole superiority, the whole victimization, all of that is there. Like, white men aim to have sexual access to black people.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? Because black women, like white men, really, like everybody knows that black people are just the best in the bedroom. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So, but in order to get that, you know, you have to do something as a like white people want that sexual access to black people.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? And all this kind of ties into that. But of course, again, it's like a unknown secret that when you get into these situations, like white people want black people because of their childlike mentalities, if you will. You know? And a lot of times what they do with black people is they just push them to doing things that are, you know, that you know, we don't really do.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But black people don't talk about this, and so again, it's like, you know, I'm telling people, read Pieces of a Puzzle if you want to see more insight into this kind of situation. But the idea is that, you know, a lot of this is to make black women sexually available.
Yes.
You know, a lot of society is built around this idea of making, you know, not just black men too, you know, but here, right here, you know, what you see with this particular, you know, black women doing better than black men, it's designed to make the black woman sexually available. Because one thing that we don't know as black people is just how valuable we are, you know, let's say sexually,
right.
You know, and that's not like our whole value per se, but it's just part of the whole package,
right?
You know, that realistically speaking, you know, just as much as everybody loves, the black man in bed, so to speak. Everybody loves the black woman in bed. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But the thing is that, you know, nobody really talks about it. But black people, like white people want that because the difference is, again, like the childlike mentality, like I was saying, the white man can't ask the white woman to do a lot of stuff.
Right.
You know, but the thing is that, you know, unfortunately, there isn't a black woman who tells a white man no in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And I mean, I'm making that as a general statement because, you know, I don't want no sister telling me, I say, because first off, if you say yes to a white man, period, I don't want to hear from you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to talk to you. You know what I'm saying? But I'm saying that in the sense of, you know, it's not necessarily going to be the first time. And of course, you know, there are going to be black women who say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But if you read this book, you know, these same women who say, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that, eventually, even if they don't do it with that white boy, they do it with somebody else. Yeah. You know? Mm-hmm. And I mean, you know, I you know, I don't want to talk about the sisters that I've been with, but a lot of times they would say weird stuff like, you want to try X, Y, and Z, and then, you know, come to find out, you know, they probably mess with some. Yeah,
some,
you know what I'm saying?
You're like, some white boy instilled that in their minds. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, all the, like it's just common sense after a certain while. You know, they're like, hey, I want you to do X, and you're like, wait, no, I ain't doing that. But you know, like, you know what I'm saying? I ain't doing that. But okay, you know, it sounds cool. I'm back to business. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? Of course. I mean, I know we're supposed to be family friendly, but
we like to speak it plain here. So, but if you're a sister out there listening to this and you disagree, by all means, reach out to us and maybe you could be on the show and we could have that debate. But that's an interesting topic. But what I also got from this finding, which is number 2, a few podcasts back, I did a podcast on the whole IQ debate, which is silly. It's silly that there's black folks who actually agree with that shit, first of all. And it's silly that there's white folks who still push that nonsense today. But this article basically tells you black women are some of the most educated people in the country, right? And they don't suffer from, you know, they don't suffer the same fate that black men suffer. So it's not about intelligence. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Because if it was an intelligence thing, they would be suffering like us. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Or even like, and that's another thing too. It's like you said, if education matters so much, they would be performing better than white men.
Better than white men. That was the next point I was going to make. Right?
Yeah.
So I want people to pay attention to that. So this whole talk about IQ and intelligence, we knew it was nonsense. Most of us did. But this article points it out to you that shit is nonsense. Right?
Exactly.
And it's really about society. It's about your race, not your class. Right?
Exactly. And actually, I wanted to point out one more thing about this one, which was a while back I did a podcast on what I call black feminism. Well, it was episode 9 of the Pro-Black Perspective, and I say it's how black feminism is, you know, stupid white women stuff or whatever. But the whole thing is
that was a great podcast, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you. And the thing is that what I wanted to say about that was, you know, how pathetic do you have to like the point of that podcast, or one of the themes of that podcast is just how pathetic white women are.
Yep.
And I think that here you have, you know, clear evidence that it's not class, it's race.
Yep.
Right? You have clear evidence that there's a racial bias going on.
Yep.
And I mean, the black woman is amazing, absolutely. But we have to talk about how in the world do white women still do worse than black women, notwithstanding that black women are facing, you know, the same racial subjugation, or that race is a factor against black women as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how pathetic do you have to be? Like, how stupid? And that's what I'm saying. I just don't understand. Like, for me, it's like if you are a black man or even a black woman and you're attracted to a white woman, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's something wrong with you because I mean I think that there's something terrible about a white woman a black woman seeking a white man. Sure, but at least the white boy got money, I guess. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Like maybe she had an excuse of, hey, I wanted to go to Trinidad, and that was the only flight I could. That was the only person who could fly the flight. You know what I'm saying? Maybe she had an excuse, but like you have no excuse for going after a white woman. Not only because she's just not attractive, but like let's say But let's face it, like she's stupid. She's pathetic.
Yeah, she's pathetic.
How are you under you're under a racial advantage? Or a racial, I don't want to say advantage, I want to say, like people are racially biased towards in your favor.
Yeah.
The cards are in your hand, if you will, or whatever. I don't know I don't know the expression, but how do you have that and then yet you still lose out racially? You know what I'm saying? It's like the white man says, "Hey, look, my race is, a benefit, for me." So he outperforms the black man. I mean, he not outperforms him, but the system is set up so that he can receive better benefits, and that's what this article is about. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It would say that, hey, look, we can use race to our advantage, and then the white woman with the same advantage. Right, the same racial advantage doesn't edge out. Like she loses to the black woman.
Right, and she's the
which is like pathetic.
She's the majority of the so-called dominant society.
Exactly, she's the majority. She's the majority of white people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? The majority of white people. She just loses out, and not only does she lose out to the white man, but she loses out to black women too.
Yep.
And it's like it's just like how pathetic does she have? Like if you're a black man who likes white women or a black woman who likes white women, you have a problem.
Kill yourself. No, I'm just kidding.
I wasn't gonna say that. I mean, what I'm saying? All right, kill the black self-hatred in yourself. I'll say that.
That's a nice way to put it.
That's the way to say kill yourself, right? No, but I mean, or you can kill the crazy. No, whatever. Let's not say anything. But I'm just saying, come on, you ain't got no excuse. Like the black woman is just better. Point blank. And every, and I'm not saying the black man is not better than the white man. I'm just saying, because he is.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that, really, when it comes to the black woman, you ain't got no excuses. I mean, you can make up an excuse in your head for the white man. You could, you say money or something, but you can't make any excuse with the black woman.
But you know what it brings.
You shouldn't make an excuse. But
right.
But
you know what it brings to mind, and I was telling someone this earlier this year that the European way of chivalry, right, was always based on the notion that their women were like children. All of that shit where they pulled out a chair for them to sit down before they could eat. All that shit where you throw your cloak down over a puddle of water so that they could step over it or whatever. It was all based on the white man looking at their women almost like children, like inferior beings to them.
Yeah.
And so we see that, but we get to see it. Like if you're a white woman, man. I mean, the fact that they list white women as minorities is just fucking crazy.
That's the audacity, man.
The audacity, right? And they give them all these benefits and shit like that. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I'm saying white women are pathetic. That's the thing. It's like white women are pathetic. I mean, the white man is like a terrible savage. I mean, I don't encourage anybody to associate with him, but. The white woman is just pathetic, because she's a savage too, but she's also pathetic.
I dare say, white women are more savage in some respects than white men.
Yeah. Yeah. But she's like an idiot, too, because it's like you said, she's a majority.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, how are you the majority, you know, and you're just so powerless, you know? Like, you have no, like, and you contributed nothing.
Nothing.
You know, pretty much, like, virtually nothing to anything. White people hate you, and for good reason. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like I said, you know, I did say that in the podcast, so, you know. But I like I said, you guys, it was episode 9, you know?
Yeah, go and check that out.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about finding number 2?
No, that's it. Yeah.
I think that was it, right? So,
yeah.
Finding number 3. Actually, let's take a quick station ID, and I'll read off finding number 3 on the other side.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
Peace Seeker, Malcolm X, John Henry Clark, Joseph Ben Yakinen, Edward Porkchop Davis, and others took notes from Carlos A. Cooks and might not have obtained their nationalistic fervor nor worldview had they not heard Cooks. This is Oni from the Pro-Black Perspective, author of the Pro-Black Compendium and Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa. I scanned 2 out-of-print books valuing $800 new on Carlos A. Cooks, the foremost black nationalist after Garvey, and added Cooks magazines into one ebook that I can send you for your reciprocity. Send some love to cash.me/$ABSONI with the subject Carlos and your email address, and if your love is strong for your people, you'll get a book. If your love is too weak, you'll get a refund, and you should double your love next time. Carlos is the missing link, who was probably the greatest mind in the world from 1940 to 1966, standing over King and Malcolm like a giant over midgets. These are the missing pages of black history from the 1940s to the 1960s. I just need you to believe in your way of reciprocity, and as you give, you will receive. Cash.me/$ABSONI. Show me you value your story.
And we're back. We're discussing this recent New York Times article on race and economic opportunity in the United States. They had 7 findings from this research that they did, and we're now on finding number 3. I'm having a discussion with Onitaset from the Pro-Black Perspective podcast. Make sure to tune in to his podcast. He has a new episode that drops every Saturday. Make sure to tune in. Only finding number 3 says that differences in family characteristics, parental marriage rates, education, wealth, and differences in ability explain very little of the black-white gap. So, to me, that second part that says differences in ability, right? I think that goes back to the whole IQ thing again, right? And
exactly.
Right. So
exactly.
So, what jumped out at you at finding number 3?
Well, that's what I'm saying. For finding number 3, I was saying, you know, that's kind of, you know, a slap in the face to the quote-unquote Marxist, communist, you know, socialist, so on and so forth. You know, the people who say, hey, you know, everything is class and not race. Mm-hmm. You know, like the idea here is that, you know, class didn't really dictate much. Right. You know, race dictated pretty much everything. Right. And that right there is, you know what, you know, it's kind of like where and what, you know, we need to focus on. But I also feel like because like I said, I feel like I already said what needs to be said about Marxism, you know? Yeah. But the idea here, again, like I said earlier, you know, if people are wasting, like the socialist, Marxist kind of stuff is just wasting your time, you know? It's wasting your time in the sense of saying that, all the problems are class, because again, class is how they stratify their society,
Yes.
but that's like internal to their nation. But we have to start looking at ourselves as an external nation, if you will, and then realize that they have a foreign policy. You know what I'm saying? And their foreign policy is what we call, quote unquote, racism.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So to say that how they look at us is like racially, kind of like how so to say that, yeah, they might have sort of a class structure, if you will,
Yeah.
they might have a class structure, but that doesn't matter in the foreign policy. In the quote unquote foreign policy,
Right.
It's domestic policy, but for another nation of people, for people that they're trying to subjugate.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's an active racial subjugation that they are trying to do, and that's why we can't get caught up in this whole Marxism stuff, because Marxism might be well and good for white folk, maybe. I don't know. I don't think so, but let's just say it is, right?
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with us.
Nope.
Because those classes don't translate the same.
No.
Like I said, you have 90%. Like they were showing you with the breakdown. 35% of the lower 1% are black people, right? And bear in mind, we're like what? 14% of the population here or something, or 12% of the population here.
Yeah.
And that's another thing to remember, too, that we've always been 12% of the population.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We've been 12% of the population for the last 100 years or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
But because it's controlled, because they control how many people come in. That's why they're, oh, no, these Latinos are here. Oh, no, these Latinos are here. But they're controlling it so that they come in a certain amount of numbers to keep us at 12%. You know what I'm saying? But
before you go on, concerning that 12% number, do you think that's really true?
That we're 12%?
Yeah.
I mean, that's all they ever report. I don't. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, we're at war, right? And
Yeah.
propaganda is a part of the war. So pushing the idea that we're this super minority, we're only 12% versus the 88%.
Well, I'm saying it's not even versus the 88 anymore, because they're now like, let's say 50-something%.
Right. 56.
And the other percent is, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the other percent are these Latinos. So that, so the Latinos are now like 14, 50% or something. I don't know. But the whole idea is that like you said, like why are we consistently 12%?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And as a part of it is that they're allowing these other people in to make it so, because we're outbreeding them.
Right.
Right? So, and again, that's exactly what they did in Latin America. They were like, hey, these black people are out, they have a higher population than us, or their population growth is higher than us, so we need to import white people in. And that's the same reason why you don't see too many African, because like a lot of people talk about how they control the immigration rate for like these African countries.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So as to say that, it's kind of like what the current president of America would say, which is he wants more people from
Norway,
like Sweden, Norway or Sweden or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
From these white countries,
mm-hmm.
Instead of these black countries, and that's what they've always been doing. Some people would say that was like I think that was the first law that America passed, was the immigration law,
yes,
which like limited the population of black people, people from Africa coming in,
yes,
but like allowed for like pretty much free passage from people,
the Philippines,
from in Europe and all that crap,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, so I mean, as far as the 12%, like again, we are in a position where we're relying on them for information.
Yes.
So we're not doing the census.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Even though Du Bois was a coon, I heard that he did one of the earliest census on black people, or at least from a black person's perspective, right, or a blackish person's perspective. But the whole thing is that we're not doing that. So we don't know what the census is.
Right.
You know, I would think though that white people want to limit the number of black people, and if they see black people being, you know, outperformed, like we just pointed out, you know, they will bring in the buffer. They will bring in the white folk to outnumber. Because again, you know, the quote unquote WASP, you know, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, he didn't want the Irish among his ranks. He didn't want the Italian among his ranks, but he brought them in order to bolster up the white numbers, and so he's doing that now with these Latinos. You get what I'm saying? So that the black population continues to be, you know, that low percent. I don't think it's higher. I would actually think it might be lower. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, because, you know, he's not going to tell you he's killing you off. You know what I'm saying? Because it could be 6%. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It could be 6%. It could be 1%. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You don't know. Because there are a lot of places in America that are just white.
It's just pure
you know
white.
What I'm saying?
Utah.
Yeah, just you can't even find a black person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They say a lot of white people have never even seen a black person in real life. You know what I'm saying?
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this finding number 3 kind of bucks against some previous hypotheses that these white folks try to put on us. That black children are more likely to grow up in single-parent households with less wealth and parents with lower levels of education. And also that, you know, people have proposed that there's a racial disparity in intelligence or innate ability. But as we've, you know, just previously discussed, the black woman is doing well as far as education goes. You know, she's out competing everyone. So how is it intelligence? Are you now going to say that black males are low IQ and not black females? It kind of knocks that whole talking point that the Jared Taylors and stuff have had, right? About this intelligence thing. So essentially what it does, it just flat out says it's about your race. It's not about anything else. It's about your race. But that's no surprise to us. We, you know, those of us who know, we already knew this.
Exactly.
So I might.
And the only difference is that white people getting paid, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars to do something that, you know, to say something that we already know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's the crazy part.
You know what I'm saying?
You know,
that's the part of it. You know?
These guys not only got paid, but they got funded to carry out this research that most black folks knew that shit already.
Exactly.
We know already, as you mentioned earlier in this broadcast, if you put a black person against a white person in a fair environment, we're going to beat them 9 times out of 10.
Exactly. 9 times out of 10.
9 times out of 10. This is why they put so many obstacles in our path. And then pretend like there's no obstacles.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, I saw something recently, and I had this conversation with a white girl one time at work. She said, "Oh, I keep hearing people talk about white privilege, but I didn't. I grew up poor and struggled and this, that." And I had to tell her, like, yo, white privilege doesn't mean you were rich.
Exactly.
All it means is that you didn't have to go through the same hurdles that, say, I have to go through. And it means that when I walk into a room and there's you and another white person in the room, you guys have the ability to fundamentally exclude me from any positions of power, essentially. Right? You guys are organized that way where you can buddy up, so to speak, and exclude me from anything positive. That's what white privilege is. And a lot of people don't understand. I hear some Negroes out here talking about there's white people who feel it too. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. They don't understand, but it's like, it's like there you go. If you explain it, like a white woman will, like white women are just not smart. I mean, so it's like, it's like you can't explain. She's like, oh, I wasn't born rich. I mean, everybody knows that there are people who are not, like, everybody knows not all white people are rich. Everybody know that,
Yeah.
Like, why would you even say that? You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody knows that not all white people are rich.
Well, they say
nothing about it.
They say that because there's a lot of dumb black folks who will be like, oh, yeah, that's true,
Yeah, exactly. Because again, like that's the whole socialist, Marxist kind of crap talk that we have to avoid, because it's letting you think that, like I said, if you're a white person, that's what it is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move on to finding number. Where are we now? Finding number 4.
Yeah.
Go ahead and read that one off.
All right. So, in 99% of neighborhoods in the United States, black boys earn less in adulthood than white boys who grow up in families with comparable income. Yeah. I
mean, again, these guys were funded and paid to tell us this, right?
Yeah. They're making bank off of that, man.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
They got the New York Times front page.
Yeah.
New York Times front page for telling you something pretty obvious. Yeah,
it's but it made me think about I actually started reading your book, Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa, and I like the fact that it's a love story, and I haven't finished it yet. I know it's a short book, but I like to take my time and visualize when I read and stuff. And first of all, I'd like to just say, for those who haven't read it yet, go out and get the book. I like the ease in which the man and the woman kind of got together. Right? It to me, it showed that she had a fundamental understanding of what he represented as a black man and what black men kind of go through, and you know what I'm saying? Like, and so when I was reading this finding, I kind of oddly thought about your book and those characters, because in this finding, again, I have a message for black women that, and this is something I've been saying since my early 20s, like, you as a black woman, because I used to see this a lot in the 90s, you can't compare your black men to white men.
Exactly.
You can't look at a white dude and say he has this and this and that going on, and then look at a black dude who's taking the bus and you want to shit on him. Because fundamentally, we earn less. Right? We earn less, and that's how they have the system constructed for us to earn less.
Exactly.
It's not about our ability. It's not about our intelligence. They have it set up that way where we just, because we're black, and this goes back to the article I read at the top of the show where this black man is talking about how he hates being black or some shit like that. He's talking about he's 6 foot tall and big, broad nose and black skin and this, that, and the other. We have to understand that that's all you need to have going on for you, for these white folks to subjugate you. That's it.
Exactly. They choked out that brother, for nothing,
For nothing. I haven't even seen the cigarettes. They talk about he was selling cigarettes illegally.
Exactly.
Where were the cigarettes in the video?
Exactly. And then they choked him out and killed him because of that. But because he was a big guy.
Yeah.
And like his daughter recently passed. Yeah,
that was sad.
But that's how bad it is. But that's what it is. Like you said. And that's because strange enough, that's the same finding reminded me of Zuberi too, because essentially it's not, and kind of this finding is kind of like, hey, the ghetto. One thing I want to say was that the ghetto is like a project, and it's a project because they tell you it's a project. They tell you it's a project. But it's an experiment. And but like Zuberi represents, like in the book of Zuberi, like what I was reminded of is just the difference between nationalism and integration.
Right. Right.
Because in integration, I don't know if I'm going to talk about integration. Let me see if I wrote it down. No, I didn't write it down. So the thing that I wanted to say was that during even Garvey's time, okay, I can't remember exactly, but I think she was the chairman of the NAACP, right? Which seems a little incongruous because I don't remember a woman being the chairman of NAACP, but like, let's say if she were, this Mary, whatever her name is, right? What she said privately to somebody when they were trying to pass the Dreyer bill, which is, what I understand is like, it was the anti-lynching bill, and it was supposed to like punish, people for lynching black people because the NAACP at the time was going against, lynchings of black people, and the whole thing was that what she says privately is that she's not going to punish white people for lynching black people. Like even though she was head of the NAACP and the NAACP was pushing this, anti-lynching bill, she's privately saying that she's not really supporting it, because she doesn't think that white people should be punished for lynching black people. But that's kind of like goes back into this whole thing of, why is it that 99% of neighborhoods, white people are comparing better than black people? It's because if white people have the power, right, they are not going to put your sons above their sons.
Never.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, never.
And really, let's be frank, they shouldn't. They're practicing nationalism. They shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
But if we're practicing integration while they're practicing nationalism, the trouble is that they're never going to put our children above theirs.
Yep.
Eddie, who was it? Chris Rock tells a joke about, how he's in the audience and he's like, even though I'm rich, who would want to be me? And no white person raises their hand.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, even though he's like the top comedian, and one of his neighbors is like Jay-Z or something, and the other neighbor is like
Mary J. Blige.
Oprah or something, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Mary J. Blige, yeah, Mary J. Blige is an amazing singer. Their white neighbors are like the dentist down the street.
Yeah, Phil, the dentist.
It's like Phil the dentist. You know what I'm saying? Like, Mary J. Blige is like, a name. You know what I mean? Like, Jay-Z or whatever. I don't care if it's Jay-Z or whatever, but he's a name.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then it's Phil the dentist.
Yeah, not the greatest dentist alive.
No, not the greatest dentist alive. He's Phil the dentist. Like,
just Phil the dentist. Yeah.
He probably does my teeth. You know what I'm saying? I'm joking. But I'm just saying though, it's just like he ain't nobody special. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't let no white boy get in my mouth.
Right.
But anyway. But I don't want y'all to stay here like, oh, you got a white dentist. Nah, I got no white dentist. Anyway, but look, but that's what I'm saying though. It's like, but that's why Zuberi is so important, because Zuberi, shows an example of nationalism, shows an example of what it would look like if black people, had their own economy going on, had their own, were practicing their own, community. You don't see the same situation. You get what I'm saying? And this is also like Pan-African nationalism. So it kind of talks to what the solution for our race is.
Yeah.
Like you said, even though it looks like a love story, it is a love story in the context of free people.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? And that's why, the women don't play games, the men don't play games.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's why they just fluid.
Yes.
Because they're being their African selves.
Yeah.
That's something that you don't get in integration. Because like you said, in integration, what you have is this, you have this you have a lot of men are like that black guy you came in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The black guy in the beginning is not going to be attractive to a black woman because he's not even attracted to himself.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? He's talking about he's 6. Now you said he's 6 feet, broad shoulders, thick lips, broad nose. That's supposed to be an attractive dude.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like if he does himself properly, he's walking around broad shoulders, he's tall, he's walking around, he's strong. He's supposed to be an attractive dude, but he comes off like an ugly dude.
Yes.
Or
mm-hmm.
he looks at himself like he's an ugly dude.
Yes.
He even says, "Why would I want to look like this?"
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, the woman that he meets is going to have the same kind of mentality. She's like, "Oh, my butt's too big. My breasts are too large." Like, this is good things. You know what I'm saying?
Good stuff.
What's she complain about? She complain about what? You know what I'm saying? But she's like, "Oh, I'm a hot mess." You know what I'm saying? No, you looking good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's the thing that that's the thing that's going on though. It's like Whereas again, like if you practice in nationalism, you celebrate, and like I said, you look at Carlos Cooks, he's from 50 years ago. You celebrating the physical features of black people. You know what I mean? You saying, "Oh man, look at her when she turns around." You know what I'm saying? Or you saying, "Oh, them thick lips, that broad nose. Oh man, these features, that dark sable skin. Oh man, I can't wait to get with her."
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Whereas on the other hand, you got this integration where you're like, "Hey, I want me a Red Bull or something."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I want some. I want her to have manageable. I wish I had manageable hair. Or look at this sister, man. Look at this straight hair she got. You know what I'm saying? All that kind of mess. But that's part and parcel with like I said, the ideology of a people. And so that's why I wrote Zuberi. That was the first book I wrote because I was like, that's the first book I published because I was like, that right there is the message that needs to be had. This idea of what would it be like for us if we were free. We wouldn't have the same because the dude, like again, the dude in the beginning that you read about, he wasn't all that.
No.
And if sisters are passing up that, it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or just like they're the sisters, there's a lot of self-hatred. If the brothers are passing up that, it makes a lot of sense. But we have to fix our ideology. Once we fix our ideology, you'll see this same brother, be smooth. He's like, "Yo, my thick lips, my 6 foot tall. I'm good.
Yep.
I stand here and I can protect the sister. Sister feels safe around me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Back in the day, even white folks used to talk about tall, dark, and handsome. Like it was, that was the thing of choice.
Exactly.
So when this brother talks about,
being tall, dark, and handsome, you know what I'm saying?
Right. And he hates being tall, dark, and handsome. That's essentially what he's saying.
Exactly. That don't make no sense, man. I'll tell you, your whole ideology gets warped,
And that thinking comes from the black stereotype that they give to you, right? So I think it was in this same finding, it kind of relates that, black men are stereotyped as scary, intimidating, and violent and all that stuff. And so they deal with obstacles a little bit more unique to them than to black women, the prison to school pipeline and stuff like that. It's for black men specifically. But, the black male stereotype that brother who I read about at the beginning, that leads to the economic disadvantages. He is telling you why he's economically disadvantaged by speaking on their behalf, so to speak, right?
Exactly.
He's telling you that I'm woeful and stuff because I'm tall and dark skinned, but a broad nose and big lips or whatever, right? But he doesn't realize that that's exactly what they use against you to keep you down economically. And the finding says something interesting where this is concerned, the black male stereotype is concerned. They said, basically, you can't, like, the way the world has changed now, there's very little service jobs anymore, right?
Exactly.
No,
No, there's more service jobs.
Yeah, there's more service jobs now, right?
Less manufacturing, something like that, right?
There's less manufacturing jobs. So, like back in the day, you could have taken your tall, dark, big, broad nose, big lip self in the back somewhere and work. But now, with more service jobs, they don't want to see you.
Exactly.
So, so more than hating your features, you should want to love creating a counter to that, where you're working in service to your own people who will appreciate those features that you have.
Exactly. See, because the white boy don't ever say, "Oh, I don't like being tall."
Pink,
or the white boy. You know what I'm saying? Like white people say that being tall, for instance, is a benefit to them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they break down that, tall people, you know what I mean? Like they break down how tall, like how height is a good thing.
Yep.
When you're white. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But here you have this brother talking about, oh, I wish I were a little bit less intimidating. Like white people would terrorize the whole planet and not ever say that they feel like they're intimidated.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Terrorize the whole planet, enslave populations. They kill populations.
Yeah.
But then you ain't never heard no white person say, "Oh, I feel like I'm intimidated."
No, never.
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 You know what I'm saying? He there, what is his name? He there purposely poisoning people in doctor's offices. Mm-hmm. But if you say I'm not going to the doctor, because they're like, why would you? That's so stupid. Mm-hmm. Why would you not trust a doctor? Well, I mean, because y'all keep killing us.
Y'all killing
like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, you keep doing stupid stuff. Why would I? So it's like, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, that's the mentality that they want. It's the weakest. Like, if like white people want that. They want black people to talk as stupid as the first guy. But the thing is that first stupid guy is not attractive to black women.
Right.
I mean, he's not attractive to any. He's attractive to possibly white women because he seems to value white features.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And he seems to be he seems to be like the kind of person that white men expect black women to be, which is like, he's not going to say no. He's not going to value himself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
She's going to be like, hey, I'd like if you were, if you and your, like another guy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't want to go,
Why don't you bring Jamal over? For what?
Exactly. Why don't you bring Jamal, or even like, your relative or something. You know what I'm saying? Like something really degrading.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, oh, yeah, sure, I guess not. Why not? We ain't anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's all nonsense. So it's like, I'm not even, and then plus, like these brothers, and the thing with brothers and white women is that, they go after the white man's refuse. The white man's like they go after the worst white women.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? The white women that because white women ain't good to begin with, but some of them are better than others. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They go after the white women. You gotta like roll. You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta roll down the street when you. You know what I'm
saying? Yeah, you have to buy a forklifth to take out on a date.
You know what I'm saying? You gotta get a forklift on a date. You know what I'm saying? Like I know it don't make no sense, man. But that's what I'm saying. Like when you really don't because the thing is that you're like, oh, this is just a guy. It could be a bad sister. It could be, like name a bad sister, Amara. Or even Lupita.
Yeah.
You'd be like, look, Lupita got thick lips and I don't know anybody who say yuck to Lupita, but you say, Lupita got thick lips and a broad nose. Okay, but then they're gonna go to some, pointing nose,
elf,
Pillsbury Doughboy,
elf-looking doughboy,
Pillsbury Doughboy, and then they're like, yo, that's the best one. Like, nah, bro. You said you rejected Lupita for that? Nah, I'm sorry, man.
When I was in college, I can't tell you how many black dudes I've seen bring around these white women and treat them like these queens. And you're looking at them and you're saying to yourself, if that was a black woman with that body type, you'd be like, ooh, yuck. Right?
Yeah.
But because it's a white chick, you're all in love. It's just
the saddest thing, man. It's the saddest thing. I've seen these brothers with these, and you're just like, and these brothers are not even like, they're not as hideous as these white women.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like no homo. You know, I'm just saying they not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're not a hot mess.
Right.
But they be going for like the messiest. Like they go for the white women that white men don't touch.
Absolutely.
And again, like you go to the white man, how they do it though, they don't go for like the black women that we ain't touching.
Nope.
You know what I mean? They go for, the top. They go for the, you know what I'm saying? They go for the Lupitas and so forth. You know what I'm saying?
They go for the prize. I always say, when you see another race deal with a black woman, it's usually like a prize black chick.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But when you see us go with a
Yeah.
white woman, it's like the reject. You know, back in the day when they used to sell underwear, like T-shirt, they used to put on the packaging irregular. They go for the irregular white woman, the one that fits poorly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm saying though, man, it's weird. I see it and I'm just like, what's, like, why? But I mean, that's what I said again, white people want that sexual access to black women. You know what I'm saying? Like a white man, because the thing is this, like, I heard that if you go to, let's say, a certain neighborhood in Brownsville, there's like a bridge or something, that you could buy a prostitute, if you will. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is that if you go there at night or whatever, you're going to see these Jew men, or like a bunch of white men, but also like, like Gentile white, like Christian whites, but also Jewish whites, whatever. But you're going to see them soliciting these black women for sex, even though these are like family men, quote unquote,
right, in
their communities. They leave it, they stepping out of their houses to go and get some black women. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that right there is like, that's just weird. Like people want, like you want to mess with a Lupita, but how do you get a Lupita is the question.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? How do you get a Lupita if you're a terrible ass white man? Well, it's because the way how you would do it is you would socially organize the situation where you put the black man down.
Yes.
Get him out of the way, and you say, "Hey, black woman, you all right?" Or you get black men to say, "Dark skin is not good." Because a lot of it, like you said, like a lot of sisters would be like, "Hey, people used to say I was dark, but they would say, oh, I'm dark and I'm not attractive as a dark woman, and it made me feel so bad as a kid." And you're looking at them, and you're like, "What's this badass? Like she's looking good."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But she's there whining about people calling her ugly, and the thing is that white boys doesn't call her ugly.
Never.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And again, it's all psychological. They got black folks saying, "Oh yeah, you ugly," and all that stuff. Meanwhile, she's fired. But because I think even Lupita said that she was bullied for being dark. You know what I'm saying?
Which is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I'm not to say that she was like, that she. Maybe she. I mean, I don't know, but like, I don't know what she was like when she was younger. But my impression would be that she was pretty good looking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, she.
You know what I'm saying?
I doubt she looked like Precious when she was
exactly.
younger.
You know what I'm saying?
Right?
I doubt she wasn't. All that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Although I might be a little controversial and be like, I didn't think Precious was that bad. You know what I'm saying? I mean, maybe in the Precious, maybe in the movie. I didn't watch the movie, but the actress isn't that bad. You know what I'm saying? I told somebody that he was a little tight with me for that.
Yeah, I may have to talk to you after the broadcast.
I'm just saying, like, I'm saying the actress. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, I know but she coons a lot, so I don't really, so that like takes some points off of her.
Yeah.
But like, but I mean, she wasn't like, like obviously I'd take her over a white woman, obviously. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously. Like, I know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not going to take her over, Lupita or something, but, you know what I'm saying? But, like, obviously, it's just like, okay, that's the only thing I got? Okay.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Come here, Becky. Come forward.
No, I'm not taking no Becky, man. Get out of here, man.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So, where were we now? We were on finding number 5.
Yeah.
It says that both black and white boys have better outcomes. And you and I talked about this earlier before recording. It says both black and white boys have better outcomes in low poverty areas, but black-white gaps are bigger in such neighborhoods. Now, you pointed this out, so I'll let you speak on it. But isn't this finding number 5 written absolutely ridiculously?
Yeah, exactly. You know, just this whole. I mean, they said low poverty, but they should just say high wealth. You know, and it's a little bit more clear that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, low poverty areas. Yeah, so it just says black and white boys have better outcomes when they, you know, have wealth. You know, in wealthy areas, but black gaps are bigger in such neighborhoods. So it's just that, you know, it's just. But like for me, it's just sad. It's white nationalism. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody. But that's the thing. Like, okay, black. You know, people do better when they have more. You know, have a higher income. You know, in a richer area. Isn't, you know? I mean, that's not, like I said. Like you said, you know, why? That's the thing with white people. It's like they got so much money that they can pay for people to state the obvious. You know?
Yeah.
You do better when you have a bigger income. I mean, you're in a richer area. Like, who didn't know that?
Right.
You know, who in America didn't know that if you're like who in the world didn't know that if you were from a wealthier area, you would do better? I mean, you know,
come on, man.
Like, who didn't know that? I don't understand. Like who are they trying to point that out to?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
It's just madness.
Like I would, you know, if you had any integrity and you were doing this research, you would just give a refund to whomever. You just be like, here you go.
You know what?
You're like, you know, I just found out, you know, Eureka, I found it. You know, like what? Anyway,
yeah.
I mean, the other part, which is about, you know, the black-white, you know, white nationalism, if you will. You know, this is white people are practicing nationalism, so they are going to make themselves better. Because the thing with nationalism, we have to understand, is that nationalism is how you empower your people. You know, it's self-empower. It's empowering your people. So the thing is that they are not supposed to be empowering you. You get what I'm saying? Right. So anything. So if you happen to come from a well-to-do family, right, and you manage to remain in a well-to-do family, then, you know, that's coincidental. You know, that you know, you did something right, I guess, or whatever. Or you did something. Somehow, you know, the cards were in your favor. You know, something happened, whatever, right? But that's not what they're designed to do. You know, they're designed to, as we all know, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And that's what they say about themselves, that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So what they're saying is that white people are continually getting richer and black people are staying the same or even regressing. Because if you look at the breakdown of the diagram that they have, you know, the wealthy become poor.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? Yes. Like you see the diagram. It's not a linear.
Yes.
You know. You know. Oh, the wealthy remain wealthy. You know. No. The wealthy of the whites become wealthier.
Yes.
And the wealthy of the blacks just go
downward.
Yeah, exactly. They'll go downward more or less. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like they showed that like through an equal distribution. You know, like let's say if you start off with 20%, you know, rich black folk, you know, it becomes 5%.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You know, and whereas white people become like 40%. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that's what we you know, we have to bear in mind that they're practicing a nationalism, and what we need to do is we need to practice nationalism too, yes. Because integration is what you'll see, and the integration result is you're going to keep going backwards.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's like trying to be included on a totem pole, and they're going to put you on the bottom of the totem pole.
Always, because why should they do? Because it's like what Frederick Douglass said. You know, if all you do is living in the house, right? You're not that valuable to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You're not that valuable to them if all you're doing is living in the house. If you're building the house, it's different.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? If you're building a house, then it's different. But you're not. You know what I mean? If you're not making the toilet paper, if you're not, because like a lot of what you call rich white people are like from families that have industries. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or have something. Remember back in the day, we used to talk about, what was it, Paris Hilton. She was the heiress to the Hilton, fortune or whatever. The Hilton fortune, or the Hiltons were, like, I guess a hotel brand or a hotel branch or something like that. You know what I mean? But they provided some sort of service. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now you go to, what you would consider a rich, like well, maybe not that rich, but like a rich black family, if you will, right? Or a comparably rich black family, if there is one. But you're like, well, what's the chain that we have?
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? What's the chain? And there are some chains, but obviously, probably not as big as that one. But there are some. But that's the whole point. It's like if you're talking about nationalism, you have to talk about, well, you need to have your own, hotel chain, your own hotel heiress or whatever, or you need to have your own, burger chain or whatever, and that's what kind of like what you saw at Black Wall Street, where black people had their own airplanes, they had their own hotels, they had their own banks, they had their own, multiple banks, multiple hotels, multiple, so on and so forth. And of course, like the difference between them and Zuberi and with Maa is that they didn't defend it well enough,
Yep.
But the whole idea is that, that's the kind of nationalism that you need to practice,
mm-hmm.
Because and that's the difference. But of course, like I said, you go back to Zuberi to understand that you have to defend it too, because that nationalism is not just economics.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Nationalism is, politics, economics, culture, ethics. It's a holistic philosophy, and that's something that we have to, understand as well.
What's kind of crazy about this study that the New York Times just published this week? About 2 years ago, 2016, they had an article from CBS News that spoke about how long it will take black families to catch up with white wealth. I don't know if you're familiar with that story they came up with, but they estimated that it would take like 228 years for blacks to catch up to current white wealth.
Exactly.
And so do y'all still think integrating is helpful to you? As Oni has said, these guys are organizing. They're organizing for their offspring, for their generations to come to be on top. You think they're going to integrate you and give you the opportunity to outclass them?
Never. Yeah, never. They prefer, what's his name? That idiot, Paris Hilton to have that wealth than they do for you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And of course they will, because that's their daughter. We don't realize, but they operate on a family first kind of basis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Race first, but it's really like family first, if you will.
Yeah.
And because they operate in that way, that's what they push. That's how it is. But we on the other hand, we're flipping. We're not even doing what it needs to be done to say, hey, look, we can be independent. Because on the dependence track, they're saying, okay, in 200-something years, they're going to catch up with what we had 200 years ago.
Oh, my God.
But what are they going to have then, And like I said, you got to go back to what your ancestors said. One of my ancestors, John Edward Bruce, said, while we're playing around, they're building weapons.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? They're fortifying their cities to fight against us, and while we're not doing that at all, might as well face facts as well as fancies. But the whole idea is that they're going to be like, the weapons that they're going to have in 200 years. You get what I'm saying? Like, you can't even fathom it. But what I'm saying is, weapons they're going to have in 200 years. And if we are in the same predicament that we are today, then we have a problem.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because like I like to point out, we couldn't take on, our ancestors. The ones that were colonized. We couldn't take them on militarily today. You get what I'm saying?
Wow.
Whereas white folk back then could have taken on, like, we couldn't take on their ancestors.
Right.
You understand?
Damn.
Like, and that's the problem. The power gap, like, not just the wealth gap, but the power gap is increasing too, and we're not even discussing that. I mean, not like you and I, but I'm just saying, in general, we as a people, we're not even addressing, this power gap, this military gap that's increasing, because with that wealth, you're going to see, because like white people got enough money to waste on this kind of stupid study. They got enough money to waste on, on more deadly weapons. Of course.
Yeah.
And I do want to just say one thing about those deadly weapons, that one time I was watching like the TV, like they had a show on television or whatever, where they were talking about a weapon, like a biological weapon that could, like, kill people under small exposure or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Like, kill people pretty quickly under small exposure. Mm. And then the next thing they said in the TV program was that they decided to produce, like, America decided to produce enough to kill everybody on Earth.
Wow.
And you say to yourself, now, what in the world, like most people say, whoa, I just found out about something. Let me bury this. Let me bury this secret. Let me not explore this anymore. America said, let's produce enough to kill everybody on Earth.
Damn. Savages.
Like just what kind of, because it don't make no sense. Like, why would you?
Yeah.
Why would you? Don't make any sense. But,
that had me kind of dumbfounded, to be honest. Just hearing what you just said, I was like, wow.
Yeah, that's the people that's in charge, and that's why we have to, that's why we have to, we have to get back in charge, because we can't have these idiots and these savages in charge.
Absolutely. And this is why, as you know, we have that think tank group that, the idea of that group is to push our agenda via a curriculum, right? That it doesn't necessarily have to be taught in school or in a school, but could be taught within the home, right? We got to get together as people, and we got to start putting our talents into more sensible areas of life. These guys have found a way to mass produce something that can kill everyone on the planet, but meanwhile you're worrying about making it to the NBA, getting signed to a major label. I'm not shitting on those things completely, but come on. We need to counter this stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the brother wrote an article about how there was somebody in South Africa, during apartheid, like one of these white scientists, matter of fact, who was devising he was trying to devise a biological weapon that would particularly, or that would only affect
black people. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was something tied to melanin or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, that's what they're doing. That's what they do. That's what you got to realize that if they have enough money to fund a stupid research project like this, they have enough money to fund worse things. Mm-hmm. They have it. And we're kind of, and unspoken truth is that we're just giving it to them, because again, you're doing integration instead of nationalism.
Right.
When you're doing that, like, white people don't want nationalism. If you pay attention to the news or whatever, or their news, anytime a country, quote unquote, nationalizes any of their industries, America attacks them.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Anytime they nationalize their oil or whatever, that is to say that anytime a nation, says, hey, look, we're going to compete with you on a fair terms, America attacks them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? And the reason being is because, they don't want anybody practicing nationalism, because nationalism is the counterpoint. It's not anything else.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's all I wanted to say on that one, though.
Okay, so that takes us to
the 6.
finding number 6. You could read that one off.
All right. So within low poverty areas, black-white gaps are smallest in places with low levels of racial bias among whites and high rates of father presence among blacks. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So just to go on this one, the thing I noticed about this one was the emphasis on fathers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing I really want to say about fathers, though, is not what they want to say, because what they want to say is, you gotta have like what they're saying is, not just father presence, but like the presence of male role models.
Yeah.
Can have a positive impact on black folk. Like, it don't have to be your dad. Like, it don't matter if your dad's in the home or not.
Right.
If there are men
in the community.
Yeah, exactly. There are men in the community who are, about it or whatever. Mm-hmm. Then it could influence you as a man too, because and that makes a lot of sense, because if all you know about men is what you see on the TV,
or what comes from your single,
exactly, your single
mother,
moms who don't like your dad for whatever reason,
right?
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If that's all you got, then you're not in a good position. But if you see black men in the community who are about it, then that's it. And so that's why I wanted to touch on, the pro-black perspective. The Pro-Black Compendium, where I have, programs that you could do, pretty much in your community, because it's not enough to just say, hey, look, I'm not just to show that, because what they're trying to say is, do like what Obama wants to do, which is, a mentor program, successful, quote unquote successful, integrationist black men,
right.
Showing up, be like, hey, look, I'm serving white folks, so you don't gotta buck dance. You could serve white people too. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't do that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But what I have in the book, the Pro-Black Compendium, is some nationalist programs that you could do, or some sort of economic industry that you could do in the community, because say what you want about these those black groups that stand on the street corner, and not all of them, and I remember somebody showed up a picture of the dude, like let's say one of these, religious groups, whatever, standing up on the corner, and then they stand next to this Arab guy who's selling nuts. But of course, the Arab guy is making money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's not just to make. And that's why I said the Pro-Black Compendium. I have things that you could do besides from standing. Like, you could make money as well, but selling important things, or doing important things, putting events together and all that kind of stuff, right? But the whole idea is that, or holding tournaments or whatever, right? But the whole thing with that is, that's what we need to start doing, because this at least what we should pick up on is that there is a need for black male role models, and so that should be a call to the black nationalists, to say, hey, look, we need to go outside. We can't be, keyboard warriors or whatever.
Right.
We have to go outside and be role models. Yeah, exactly. Organize and be role models present in the lives of black youth, because black youth are looking for role models.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the people who are out there, sometimes the male role models are going to be like gangbangers. in some communities. In some communities, you know, the dude who's like flossing and flaunting is like the gangbanger. Yep. You know, a brother would tell me that, you know, like a gangbanger would tell you, tell a kid, hey, can you get me a soda pop? And he would give him $100 bill. And of course, when he does that, and then he tells the boy to keep the change from the soda pop, you know, so the kid has made $99+, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, he doesn't. I don't think he does this too often. But when he does that, it has a mental impression on this little boy. Like, yo, this dude is doing well for himself. I need to associate with him. He's a good role model. So what we need to do as nationalists is, you know, similarly, you know, not necessarily giving no kid no $100. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, I'm gonna hold on to my $100. You know what I'm saying? As soon as I get it. But the whole thing is that, you know, as nationalists, you have to be out in the community, interacting with the kids and being being a success in some sort of capacity. You know, so, even if it's, you know, selling nuts or whatever, you know, that's better than, you know, like say being behind a computer screen and ranting to nobody, or being behind your phone, you know, your Twitter fingers and ranting to nobody. You know.
So that takes me back to my college days in the 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember me and another guy I was cool with at the time. We were walking off of campus, and there was a older man talking to a kid who had to be about 13. Black folks, right? Older black man, young black kid. An older black man was like getting on this kid's case, telling him like, "What? Are you a punk? Are you afraid? What, you afraid to go to jail? Huh?" And the kid was like, no, what? And you know, he just kept badgering him about it. Like, you afraid to go to jail and stuff like that? Don't be no punk out here. And we have to counter that kind of shit. You know?
Exactly.
There needs to be the guys out here who are talking to these kids and telling them, man, getting an education is not bad, man. You know, avoid jail at all costs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I totally get what you're saying. We could be the fathers, even though we may not be biological fathers to these kids out here. We got to get out here and start kind of positively influencing these kids, because we already have a system, as this paper points out in those previous discussions you and I have had and what our podcasts are about. We already have a system that's actively, every day, 24/7 a week, actively plotting your downfall as a black person, right? We also have our own black folks who ain't about nothing out here helping that system carry out its task. So we have to be out here as men in the community talking to these young folks especially. You know, and your book does have a good program in there that people should buy the book, check out the program. Let's see if we can start linking some of these movements in the community together, so that we could just completely change, you know, and really influence positively these kids going forward, man.
Yeah, exactly. Because I remember one time I was walking in the neighborhood, I saw this little boy. I mean, I don't know how old he was. He might have been like 8 or something, you know, but he's sagging, you know, and this older man, you know, I guess he's looking like, you know, not, he's like, that's not good. So I said, why don't you say something to the kid? And he's like, it's not my kid, you know, and that right there though is like, you know, and I mean, and troubling is that, you know, on the one hand, you know, I get it. You know what I mean? Like we kind of created a culture where it was like you can't talk to nobody else's kid. You know, even though we came from a culture where you could talk to anybody's kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everybody's kid was your kid, but nowadays it's like I finally got around to watching that Spike Lee movie where I think the dude yells at this boy's kid, and the mother goes off on him. And I mean, that's like something that you would expect these days too, you know?
Yeah.
You know, what can do the right thing, maybe? I don't know. But at the same time, it's like, that's the kind of mentality we got to get rid of. because if you're not watching the kid per se, or if you're not enough to keep the kid from sagging, or to keep the kid from degrading himself, or to keep the kid from being on the corner, or whatever, right? Then ask for help, if you will,
Yeah.
or not necessarily ask for help, but accept help, because that's where we are right now, where it's like, and actually, I mean, like you could go back into that feminism thing where it's like, hey, you ain't my boy's father or something, or you don't pay his bills,
Right.
or you don't, but that goes back into this whole economic, trouble. It's like, oh, you ain't paying my bills, so be quiet.
Right.
And it's like, well, white people want that. They want that conversation. They want that economic trouble going on between the black man and the black woman.
Right.
Like they want that.
Oni?
Yes.
Sorry to cut you off, but I just had to go back to one thing you said a second ago. If you said you're just getting around to watching Do the Right Thing, that's a little bit of an understatement, right? Just getting around 30 years later, that's an understatement, right? But yeah, no, your point is still well taken. I mean, we have to do better because ultimately, yeah, I mean, we're playing into the hands of the people who are trying to destroy us. You know what I'm saying?
Although I probably watched it 5 years ago. I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago. But I was just saying, it's like, I mean, it wasn't on my top. It wasn't.
Yeah, but finally getting around. I mean that. That's struck me. Let's take a station break, and we'll come back to the last finding, number 7, I think it is, right?
Yeah.
Which actually ties into what we were just talking about. Well, let's take a quick station break, and we'll come back.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
Peace Seeker, Malcolm X, John Henry Clark, Joseph Ben Yakinen, Edward Porkchop Davis, and others took notes from Carlos A. Cooks and might not have obtained their nationalistic fervor nor worldview had they not heard Cooks. This is Oni from the Pro-Black Perspective, author of the Pro-Black Compendium, and Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa. I scanned 2 out-of-print books valuing $800 new on Carlos A. Cooks, the foremost black nationalist after Garvey, and added Cooks magazines into one ebook that I can send you for your reciprocity. Send some love to cash.me/$ABSONI with the subject Carlos and your email address, and if your love is strong for your people, you'll get a book. If your love is too weak, you'll get a refund, and you should double your love next time. Carlos is the missing link, who was probably the greatest mind in the world from 1940 to 1966, standing over King and Malcolm like a giant over midgets. These are the missing pages of black history from the 1940s to the 1960s. I just need you to believe in your way of reciprocity, and as you give, you will receive. Cash.me/$ABSONI. Show me you value your story.
And we're back. We're about to wrap up this episode of the crossover podcast between the Bitter Medicine Podcast and the Pro-Black Perspective, with its host Onitaset. So now we've reached to number 7 in terms of the findings, which actually I'll let you have the last reading. Can you tell us what finding number 7 is?
Yeah, so the black-white gap is not immutable. Black boys who move to better neighborhoods as children have significantly better outcomes.
So this one made me think about like an old Eddie Murphy joke. where I don't remember the punchline, but the setup was along the lines of him and his mother used to send him and his brother, I guess Charlie Murphy, off to these white folks in the summertime. And I could never understand, why do black folks package up their children and send them to white folks?
I'll tell you, shoot, your guess will be as good as mine, man. Well, that's like the worst thing you can do. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, Malcolm X spoke about that. That's like the worst thing you could do. To give your children to your enemy, to educate them and this, that, and the other. So this finding kind of sounded a little bit like that to me, right? You send black kids basically out of the hood, right, and into these integrated, if not primarily white neighborhoods, and they'll do better. So to me, this one came across like a message to black folks. Get your kids around more white people, they'll do better.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably what they was trying to say. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But the thing is that I want to take from this is that brother recently showed a quotation from the Shona people, on education. I thought it was pretty interesting, so I wanted to read that one. But in Shona, it's pardon my Shona, right? But it's Simbi Inaroa Ichapisa, right? And what it means is iron is molded when it is still hot,
Yeah.
So on regard to education, it's like, a child, like what we really should take from this too, what we should take from this in addition is, besides from the fact that white people trying to promote themselves as the best people to grow up around, which is a big right? But the idea is that, children are more easily molded, and it's really about the formative years, and we have to start focusing on the formative years more so, more heavily.
Yeah.
Because the formative years can, dictate the outcome, if you will, and so like if you are, a father or a mother or whatever, be really, really good to your child. Like, be there for your child during their early years.
Right.
Be supportive of them, be encouraging them, and teach them that, and don't do what a lot of our parents did, which was turn us over to white folk, the moment that we began to talk, or the moment we began to walk or whatever, don't do that, but be there in the early years. And I know it's hard and it's impractical and all that, but and again, like, that's another thing that we're not talking about in regards to the gender gap. I mean, the wage gap is if black people, see, because this is the thing right here, black people are getting paid enough for individuals, for an individual, not for a family.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Black women are being paid enough for an individual. You get what I'm saying? Not for a family. White women, you get to say whatever, right? But white men pay themselves enough for a family. You see what I'm saying? So it's like what you see is that even in the case of like, because the thing is that you as a black family should be there for your kid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or you should provide a private education for your kid. You get what I'm saying? But it's difficult if you're only getting enough money for yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But that's the whole thing that white people are trying to do to us. So it's like, the formative years, the childhood years, those are fundamental. Those are of the utmost.
I agree. And another thing I'd like to tack on here, it's something I've noticed for a long time now, and I'm trying to break the cycle myself. I've noticed in the black community, we have no problem. In fact, we kind of promote it, that each generation has to start from scratch, has to start from zero. And it's something, you know, we use these terms, these kind of vague things like, oh, it builds character and this, that, and the other. But white folks don't do that shit. White folks try to give advantages to their kids from jump, right?
Exactly.
We make it so that, you know, I saw a video, I forget what it was for, but it had Van Jones and a bunch of other black so-called celebrities and stuff. And they were talking about when they first experienced racism. And some of them were like 10. And I'm saying to myself, well, where the fuck were your parents? Pardon my language. How is it you reached 10 and 12 and 18 and all kind of stuff before you know, really knew what racism was? And it's because their parents just let them live and just let things happen by chance, right? So to build on what you were saying, I think we need to actively pursue, you know, getting our kids together, so to speak, and stop having it where our kids just kind of live and encounter these issues at some point. You know, you and I had a conversation some time ago, and you were asking, you know, when, you know, how did I come into consciousness and stuff like that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I kind of said, like, well, it kind of was always there, right?
Exactly.
But for a lot of black folks, it's not always there. It happens when they become teenagers, you know, 20, 21, and stuff like that. We have to start dealing with this when our children are much younger, you know?
Yeah, I agree, man.
Yeah.
That's the thing, that we don't, you know, we have to be actively forming our children, you know, because that's the most important time, you know. And it's not to say that you can't form an adult, but it's just much easier with a child.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
It's just because they're more open to it, you know. You know, they're just more open to it. Cause I have a young son. He's like, like 2, right? But the thing with him was that, like, for instance, if I was like, I wanted to turn off the TV, so I'm not necessarily a germaphobe or anything, but let's say I was turning off the TV, like, through my shirt, you know, like, instead of touching it or whatever, and then later on the same little boy walks up to the TV and, you know, holds his shirt up, you know, to, like, turn off the TV or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, that's how malleable he is, you know? And I mean, obviously you want to wait till he's a little older to, you know, introduce certain ideas, but the whole other thing is that that's where they are, you know, whereas, you know, if I do that in front of an adult, they're not going to do the same thing. They're just going to do how they were done. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But that's the difference. It's like, you got to be there for your kids in the early years. But again, white folk are not making it easy for that. You know what I mean? And so we might, you should also organize. You know, you like I was saying on social media, on my Twitter, you know, at Onitaset or whatever, right? I was on my, you know, I was saying that, you know, because there was a video of this white woman, like, who just beat this black boy, you know, like one of her black students, like, in the classroom, just, like, wailed on his head and then mocked him afterwards, right? And all the other black kids were just laughing. But it was like, that is, you know, and I was like, hey, look, you know, we need to build, you know, we need to talk, we have to be serious about, you know, sending our kids, like, stop sending our kids to this public school system, you know, and one of the sisters, you know, raised up the point that, you know, we can't necessarily afford to do otherwise, but the reality is that all of us can put something towards at least some kids getting that better education.
True.
If not our kid, somebody's kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't really know the other people, but like other groups of people do like finance their private schools, even if they don't have any kids in that private school.
Right.
Because they understand that a private school, can have graduates who return favors to the community. If a community invests in a private education, the graduates of that private education would return benefits back to that community.
Right.
You're gonna say because they might even be what you call alumni and help finance that school for when their grandchildren are coming up. You know what I'm saying? It's a community investment.
Right.
But because we don't believe in that, we just keep sending our kids to the public school system, and again, they are malleable. You know what I mean? They are, they're moldable. They're all that. So it's like we're setting ourselves up for that kind of failure, if you will.
Yeah. So, overall, what did the study say to you overall?
So, like I said, it really goes into the whole, race over class.
Yep.
Race over class, and just this idea that, we need to start practicing nationalism because, socialism is not going to work, that we have to develop for ourselves. That we have to develop for ourselves. It's not going to be it's not going to be a worthwhile solution. We have to do for ourselves because, like you pointed out, 200 something years is too long to catch up with the current white boys.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's too long to catch up with them. I don't have 200 years.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And by the looks of it, we don't even know if there's going to be black people in 200 years.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's not in America. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Unless we do something to preserve ourselves. Yes. And that's what it's really about, to preserve ourselves.
Well,
yeah.
Guys, you heard it here today. This is our breakdown of the recent New York Times article on race and economics. And what it boils down to is you have to be about race first. And you have to organize or else you will be decimated, right? Like you just said, only we don't have 228 years to catch up to anyone, to catch up to anyone today, right? So we have to do better as a people. This study just told us what we pretty much already know, those of us who are in the know. Hopefully those who weren't in the know prior will have learned something in today's broadcast. But Oni, it's been great. Can you tell the people where they can find you and your podcast and your books?
Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Tumblr. Both names are Onitaset, Onitaset. I have a website called AfricanBloodSiblings.wordpress.com. I have two print books, which is the Pro-Black the Pro-Black Compendium, and Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa. I also have an ebook called the Carlos A. Cooks Reader. It's a really good one, and I have the podcast, like you said, the sister show, the Pro-Black Perspective, and you can catch that on Mixcloud and on YouTube, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay, and I will have all of that information down in the description box. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Until next time, this has been the Bitter Medicine Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com. welcome to your friends and colleagues and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ Radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.